Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Jujutsu Kaisen. The Snow Woman wife at the beginning is so beautiful. Chapter 21. So, what should I do? The sudden appearance of Lu Hu and Nose was something Lan Shuyan had not expected. Mirror Flower can only draw. He has Qingshan Shuiji by his side, but he also has Xiao Jia and the special grade specific disease curse spirit herpes god on the opposite side. All three guys are special grade. No matter how you look at it, you can't beat them. The key is that Xiao Jia seems to really understand his ability. From beginning to end, he didn't show any hostility, but directly let Herpes God come out. What makes Lan Shuyan even more helpless is that they are all male evil spirits. Lan Shuyan feels that he can't use Mirror Flower like he did against Snake Lady. Is this guy afraid that I will aim the Mirror Flower at him and then use his curse spirit manipulation technique? Lan Shuyan was really helpless. Lan, I will help you. You haven't fallen in love with me yet. You can only lose your life if you are fascinated by me. So I will never allow you to be killed by others. So, listen carefully to what I say next. Another use of Mirror Flower Water Moon is to set free constraints, which is what your ancestors did. The usage of flowers in your mirror is different from mine. You don't need to be full of love emotions. And there can also be 7 emotions: joy, anger, worry, thought, sadness, fear, and surprise. There can also be 6 desires: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. All emotions can be transformed into positive energy. Lan Shuyan began to teach Lan Shuyan how to use his own abilities to the greatest extent possible. This was why Gojo Satoru had to leave her alone at that time, because Qingshan Shuiji really understood Mirror Flower and Water Moon. And Lan Shuyan was obviously stunned for a moment. Then he smiled. What a proud wife. She said that she was not a concubine, but in reality her body was still very honest. Wait, suddenly Lan Shuyan reacted. My usage of viewing flowers in the mirror is different from yours. Ah, Miss Qingshan, you can also see the flowers in the mirror. Lan Shuyan was immediately confused. Isn't this the ability of Tianyu Zubin? Qingshan Shuiji looked at Lan Shuyan speechlessly. Is this the point? Little brother, I am telling you something important. Why do you always think so fast? Otherwise, why do you think Gojo Satoru said that I can transform the emotion of love into positive energy and condense it into a human body? Qingshan Shuiji rolled her eyes at Lan Shuyan in annoyance. This look was full of charm. Remember, the way to restrain freedom needs to be consistent with your own heaven and curse. But before Qingshan Shuiji finished speaking, her voice suddenly stopped. Because at this moment, Qingshan Shuiji's body had disappeared, and was instead wrapped in a black sphere. This made Lan Shuyan dumbfounded. So, how to restrain, how to sign a contract, how to get a loan. I can't let you learn that, otherwise it will be really troublesome. Well, Snow Girl, maybe you can add to my cursed spirit manipulation technique. Xiao Jia put his hands in his pockets, directly distanced himself, and hid behind the shikigami that had just been frozen by the Snow Girl. This was to block his own figure. He might intervene in the battle between Lu Hu and Lan Shuyan later, and he couldn't be seen by Lan Shuyan. Because at this moment Lu Hu had come to Lan Shuyan, with a heating flame in his hand, and Lan Shuyan had also raised his hand, also with a heating flame. The palms of the two collided, and then a flame exploded. What a unique ability. But, knowing the information about your ability, it will be easy to solve. Lu Hu had the information about Lan Shuyan's ability, which was given to him by Xiao Ji, so a lot of fire gravel worms suddenly appeared from the hole on his head, which looked like fly heads. They blocked Lu Hu's body, and many of them rushed directly towards Lan Shuyan, trapping Lan Shuyan directly in the group of fly heads. In fact, at the moment the fire gravel worms appeared, Lan Shuyan could actually control these fire gravel worms, but because he lost Lu Hu's vision, Lan Shuyan also lost the effect of Mirror Flower. What, do you want to reconsider it? Your ability to see flowers in the mirror is the best way to deal with Gojo Satoru. You actually have great potential, but you are not familiar with your current abilities. As long as you join us, we can even help you fully control your abilities. Xiao Jia's voice sounded again, asking Lan Shuyan again. This might be the reason why these fly heads did not take any more action. If Lan Shuyan refused again, he might be blown away and unable to take care of himself, right? Lan Shuyan fell into silence. His brows were really tightly furrowed. He felt that his abilities were rubbish. He dared to come into this field because Lan Shuyan knew that the finger curse spirit was a newly born curse spirit, and he still had Itadori Yuji. At worst, he could still rely on Qingshan Shuiji if he had to. But no matter whether it was Qingshan Shuiji, Gojo Satoru, or the current Shiujiya, they all kept emphasizing that his abilities were very strong. It was Qingshan. Did Shuiji just say that he signed a bond with his own ability, flowers in the mirror and moon in the water? Or was it his own, viewing flowers in the mirror? Wait, suddenly, Lan Shuyan's mouth opened up and he smiled. Gojo Satoru once said that the combination of viewing flowers in the mirror and flowers in the mirror and moon in the water is his heaven and curse binding all-seeing hands. And Lan Shuyan remembered that in the comics, when Sukuna, who controlled Fushiguro Megumi, fought with Gojo Satoru, he could use the bondage to modify the effect of his own ability and make an equivalent exchange. This also proves that the process of equivalently binding one's own ability is not complicated. In other words, the existence of bondage actually exists in the human body. Ha 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 ha. Interesting, interesting. Then give it a try. I want to take out a loan to buy restraints. Lan Shuyan grinned. The cursed powers he possessed were temporary, which meant that he actually had restraints, and this restraint kept his body in a state of formula melting, in which he could not feel his own forms. In this case, forms and cursed powers could only appear when certain conditions were met. This was his heaven and cursed bondage. For this reason, the answer he came up with was that flowers in the mirror and moon in the water were caused by the forms melting, and flowers in the mirror were caused by the loss of cursed powers, so he combined the two together and put on another layer of restraint. And Lan Shuyan also had an idea he wanted to try. That was to see if he could find a bug. Shiuji didn't hear Lan Shuyan's response, and he obviously felt something was wrong. Luhu was the same. He directly controlled the fire gravel worms to make a subtle sound, which was not conspicuous in the sound of their flapping wings, and could not be heard at all if he didn't listen carefully. Then, all the fire gravel worms surrounding Lan Shuyan exploded. Qingshan Shuiji is here. In the realm of the herpes god, she was locked in a coffin as soon as she came in. Feel, has the guaranteed hit effect been triggered? I am fine now, so the effect of this curse spirit must have a prerequisite. If there is a domain ability with a prerequisite, the effect of the must hit should be very strong. In a short period of time, Qingshan Shuiji also thought of a lot. After all, she has lived for more than 1,000 years. Although she was sealed for nearly 500 years in this 1,000 years, she still has a lot of experience. She thinks that this herpes god is not strong. Bang! Qingshan Shuiji immediately smashed the coffin. She looked at the herpes god in the darkness. I am very worried about him. So I don't want to waste time with you. Qingshan Shuiji raised her hands directly, and her palms intertwined, with her right hand outside and her left hand inside, her hands at the same height as her chest line. She nodded and bent her knees, her eyes gently moving downwards. Clear water, blue wind, cold crystals. Domain unfolds, wind, flowers, snow, and moon. As Qingshan Shuiji's voice fell, the surrounding territory belonging to the herpes god was immediately suppressed, and turned into a lake with clear water and a bright moon hanging in the sky, and white cherry blossoms on both sides. And Qingshan Shuiji's dress also changed. It felt like a tang suit, all white, dancing gracefully, beautiful as a fairy. Wind, Qingshan Shuiji spoke again, and the realm immediately changed again. The black moon in the sky disappeared, and the water surface froze. The entire body of the herpes god also turned into ice. Then the realm shattered, and everything around disappeared. Qingshan Shuiji and the herpes god returned to their original positions, but the herpes god turned into an ice crystal and began to shatter the moment he came out of the realm. Qingshan Shuiji's clothes changed back to the original cheongsam. But before Qingshan Shuiji looked around, she heard a burst of explosions, which made her turn her head and find that there were bursts of thick smoke gathering at the location of Luhu. How strange. According to my speculation, you should not be able to kill the herpes god, because you have been sealed for nearly 500 years and your spell should be in a state of melting. Shiuji was also a little surprised when he saw Qingshan Shuiji come out. In Shiuji's imagination, Even if the herpes god could not use the guaranteed effect to make Qingzhan Shuiji sick and die, it should have delayed for a long time, but Qingzhan Shuiji came out not long after, proving that Qingzhan Shuiji must have used the field expansion. He was surprised that Qingzhan Shuiji was sealed for so long by Mirror Flower Water Moon, and his spell did not melt. Well, I have my own way. So, what other tricks do you have, Noose? Qingshan Shuiji covered her mouth with her palm, floating off the ground and looking down at Sha Yuji. From Sha Yuji's perspective, it must be a look of disdain, but she didn't show him her panties. I'm very curious, my appearance has changed, how can you recognize me? After all, my appearance changed from more than 1,000 years ago to nearly 500 years ago. Sha Yuji was really curious. But obviously, his question made Qingshan Shuiji even more disgusted, and they both distanced themselves from Sha Yuji. I haven't seen you for nearly 500 years. Has your disguised brain become stupid? The stitches on your forehead, plus your understanding of flowers in the mirror, and me, make it hard for me not to think of your identity. Do you believe me? I can open your skull. Qingshan Shuiji was really disgusted. Her husband once said, don't talk too much to idiots, otherwise you will become stupid too. Well, your master is dead. Now, become mine. Sha Yuji was choked by the words, and did not say anything more, but raised his hand directly. He wanted to tame Qingshan Shuiji and make Qingshan Shuiji his own. The cursed spirit with the owner could not be seized and tamed by Sha Yuji's cursed spirit manipulation technique. The reason why he wanted Qingshan Shuiji was also very simple. Qingshan Shuiji could also use the ability of viewing flowers in the mirror, which could break the space and also break the infinite power of Gojo Satoru. Who did you say was dead? Miss Qingshan is mine. Only I can bully others, others can never bully me. At this time, Lan Shuyan's voice echoed. This made Sha Yuji frown. He looked behind Qingzhan Shuiji, and a figure was walking out of the smoke. At this time, Lan Shuyan's shirt was torn, revealing his muscular upper body with a very low fat rate. Ah, Lan, you are so domineering, but I will not become someone else's property. I will always be here before I eat you. Qingshan Shuiji showed a gentle smile to Lan Shuyan, which was different from the disdain she showed to Sha Yuji just now. It really is a difference in treatment. It's not easy to eat me, Miss Qingshan. I should be the one to eat you. After all, I want to be Ning Kaichen's man. Lan Shuyan grinned, swinging the 3-section staff in his hand and holding it under his armpit. By the way, who is Ning Kaichen? Why do you want to be his man? Qingshan Shuiji floated to Lan Shuyan's side and asked Lan Shuyan with a smile. This made Lan Shuyan unable to understand the text. After all, Lan Shuyan and Qingshan Shuiji often communicated in Mandarin subconsciously. Hey, why is he still alive? Luhu. Sha Yuji didn't understand why Lan Shuyan was still alive, because Lan Shuyan, who couldn't activate Mirror Flower, was just an ordinary person. Even if he could use viewing flowers in the mirror, it would be impossible for him to clean up so many flies in an instant, right? Moreover, those flies were specially raised by Luhu, and they were all mixed with Luhu's spells, and they had a binding contract, using the lives of the flies for an equivalent exchange of power. How can it be? A mere human being. However, Luhu did not answer Sha Yuji. Instead, he was in disbelief. He was looking down at his body. His limbs fell directly to the ground, including his short body. Finally, his head rolled on the ground and instantly rolled to Sha Yuji's feet. His body, his neck, all the wounds were neatly smooth. Could it be? Have you awakened? The Bound, Mirror Flower and Water Moon. How could it be possible to succeed in one go? Or are you blindly using equivalent exchange? Sha Yuji's face revealed a twisted smile. Well, just as you said. Lan Shuyan raised his hand lightly, and one hand actually made the same seal as Sukuna, and the other hand held Yuyun and swung it, leaving an afterimage. This made Sha Yuji's eyes widen, and he immediately picked up the Luhu under his feet and dodged. The unknown cursed spirit that he released to block Qingshan Shuiji's attack at the beginning and turned into an ice sculpture was directly turned into unequal slices. After being turned into slices, the unknown cursed spirit that should have died actually came back to life, and then the flesh and blood of the sliced body began to wriggle and expand, and finally exploded directly, and the flesh and blood splattered all over the ground and turned into black ashes and disappeared. Hey, are you kidding me? Why is it Sukuna's technique, Jia? And there seemed to be some strange cursed energy mixed in the slash. The active transformation of positive energy. It allowed its body to regenerate, but it exploded because it couldn't bear all the positive energy. Xiaoyuji held Luhu's head in his hand and dropped it far away. What did Lan Shuyan exchange for the restraints that he actually awakened directly? This is no joke. In general, every owner of Mirror Flower Water Moon and Viewing Flowers in the Mirror will get different effects after using the restraints, because the awakening obtained by the restraints is different according to the results from the restraints set by different people, but all of them are based on the abilities of Mirror Flower Water Moon and Viewing Flowers in the Mirror. Who knows? Lan Shuyan grinned and started to act. But Xiaoyuji knew that this plan was useless, so he released hundreds of cursed spirits to pounce in the direction of Lan Shuyan. This made Lan Shuyan stop immediately. He quickly scanned these cursed spirits that were tamed and controlled by Xiaoyuji. Well, there are no females, so you can kill them without worry. So, they all turned into neatly cut pieces of meat in an instant. Then they turned into black ashes and disappeared. Lan Shuyan looked around and did not see Xiaoyuji. Have you retreated? What a coward. Next time, I'll smash your skull and expose your nootropics. Lan Shuyan looked at the flesh and blood wall that separated him and Yuji Itadori. This was also the curse of Geto Suguru. It was called Tubi. It had no attack power, and its only function was to block, and it was very strong. Lan Shuyan raised his hand and pressed on it. 8. Lan Shuyan muttered to himself. The flesh on the surface of the wall instantly began to explode with grid-like cut wounds, forcibly creating a door-like passage. The moment Lan Shuyan walked over, all the Sukuna abilities on his body disappeared. Qingshan Shuiji also noticed it and immediately followed. Itadori Yuji was no longer here, and even the finger curse spirit was gone, but judging from the scene here, a battle had taken place, and Lan Shuyan knew clearly that Sukuna had come out. Cut. It really makes me unhappy, it's still the same trend as before. Lan Shuyan sighed. After being manipulated by Xiaoyuji and the others, the plot will probably go back to the same trend as before. In this case, it's useless for Lan Shuyan to rush out. It's estimated that Sukuna went to find Fushiguro Megumi. Although he himself is also the person Sukuna wants to kill, he probably wants to enjoy it in the end, so he didn't find him first. Sukuna, a guy who does whatever he wants. Lan, I am very curious, what kind of restraints have you set? Qingshan Shuiji did not care about the changes here, but once again put her arms around Lan Shuyan's neck and hung on him. Just now, when she came out of the Herpes God realm, Qingshan Shuiji did not get angry immediately because she belonged to Lan Shuyan and could feel Lan Shuyan's life and death. But she didn't know what kind of restraints Lan Shuyan had set. First, the activation condition of Mirror Flower and Water Moon has changed to all enemies within a certain range who are hostile to me. I can directly copy the mirror image of one of the hostile people and apply it to myself. The difference from before is that it no longer requires vision capture. Secondly, the body can move freely, and at the same time, the effect of watching flowers in the mirror can be applied to the copied mirror image. Conversely, the copied mirror image spell power can also be converted into positive energy through watching flowers in the mirror. Third, the copied image can be bound to a separate contract. The price is: first, you cannot expand the field where the technique is held. Second, the inability to comprehend the apex of the technique. Third, you can't use the black flash that can transform people. Fourth, lose the combat experience of the mirror object. Fifth, it is not possible to use the technique directly. If you want to use it, you need to understand the opponent's technique at least. Sixth, you cannot use any spell tools other than special grade spell tools, otherwise you will not be able to cast flowers in the mirror. Lan Shuyan didn't hide his intention from Qingshan Shuiji, and told him everything directly. This made Qingshan Shuiji's face full of question marks. Can it be played like this? This is simply outrageous. Why do you say that? Because Lan Shuyan is heaven and curse bound. He has no curse power when his own ability is not triggered, and he can't feel the spell, which means that he can't comprehend the extreme and expand his own field. As for the black flash, There is, watching flowers in the mirror, why do you need a black flash? Flowers in the mirror, as long as Lan Shuyan has the power of the spell and wants to use it, he can use it at any time, and the power is stronger than the black flash. Combat experience is also a tricky constraint, because combat experience may include experience in using the spell of copying the mirror image, and spell experience is very important for a spellcaster. But she doesn't quite understand that she can only use the 3-section staff. The reason why I cannot use spell tools other than special grade spell tools is because I think that for someone like me who normally has no spell power, spell tools are the only viable way to deal with cursed spirits, so I can only use a single grade of spell tools to get the biggest improvement, and I just happen to have the special grade spell tool Yuyun in my hand. Lan Shuyan seemed to know what Qingshan Shuiji was wondering about, so he explained. Isn't it bad to play with bondage like this? The price may be very high. Qingshan Shuiji immediately floated in front of Lan Shuyan, holding Lan Shuyan's cheek and speaking seriously. Lan Shuyan could feel Qingshan Shuiji's worry. Are you, the married woman, beginning to fall in love with me? Lan Shuyan also held Qingshan Shuiji's cheek, which was cool and soft. I just don't want you to die before I eat you. Qingshan Shuiji rolled her eyes at Lan Shuyan and distanced herself from him. Humph, Tsunere little wife, she's so cute. Actually, it's not really playing with bondage, because I did give up a lot. This cannot be expanded using the domain, which includes the domain expansion of my mirror copy object. The other things combined are equivalent to limiting my growth. I have completely become a sorcerer who can only rely on the basic abilities of Mirror Flower Water Moon and Mirror Viewing Flowers. Lan Shuyan spread his hands. But Qingshan Shuiji rolled his eyes at him again. You said the same thing before, what's the difference? I won't say much about the rest, but it would be rude to restrict the ability to use the mirror copy area. Field expansion is the most useful and powerful move, but you have restrained it. Qingshan Shuiji rolled her eyes at Lan Shuyan and then showed a helpless expression. There is no way. Without this point, the equivalence is not equal. And it is not that the domain cannot be used, but it requires a specified price to use it. Let's go. Let's go out and take a look. Sukuna was here just now, so I copied him. Now his location seems to be beyond the range of my mirror copy. Lan Shuyan stretched out his hand to adjust his glasses, holding the 3-section staff Yuyun and leaving directly towards the exit of the juvenile detention center, because at this moment the domain of the finger curse spirit has begun to disappear, and the terrain and buildings have returned to their original appearance. Qingshan Shuiji didn't say much, and followed Lan Shuyan to leave. It was really amazing that Lan Shuyan could think of such a constraint as specifying a price. If he violated it, the price would definitely be very high. After all, it must be equal in terms of equivalence. After leaving the juvenile detention center, it was very quiet outside, and there was no sound of any fighting. Ms. Qingshan, could you please sense Fushigiro's location? Lan Shuyan's current mirror flower could not sense Sukuna's hostility at all, which also proved that he was far away and beyond the range of his binding to obtain the mirror copy. Qingshan Shuiji is really at two extremes towards Lan Shuyan and towards other people. If someone else asked her for help now, she would definitely say, I won't. Then, Qingshan Shuiji directly carried Lan Shuyan like a princess and flew into the sky. This made Lan Shuyan's face full of question marks. Oh my god. How embarrassing, being carried like a princess by a woman. But Miss Qingshan's body is really soft, especially for him at this time. The fruit is so big that he can't hold it with both hands, and he has to use 4 hands as a support. Not long after, Qingshan Shuiji began to descend. Lan Shuyan was also gently placed on the ground by Qingshan Shuiji. Thank you, Miss Qingshan, you must be tired, go back to the realm of life on the back of your hand. Lan Shuyan could feel that Qingshan Shuiji was very tired. After all, Qingshan Shuiji was his Shikigami. Qingshan Shuiji smiled gently, and her body turned into white light and returned to the realm of life on the back of Lan Shuyan's hand. As Lan Shuyan said, Qingshan Shuiji was indeed very tired. She had just come out of the seal of Mirror Flower Water Moon not long ago. Just as Sha Yuji said, her technique was in a state of melting, but Qingshan Shuiji used a special method to restore the state of the technique melting. After Qingshan Shuiji went back, Lan Shuyan looked not far away. In the rain, Fushiguro Megumi was standing straight, with his head down and silent, and opposite him was Yuji Itadori, who was lying on the ground, with blood and rain mixed on the ground, and a cut on his chest. Kugasaki Nobara was fine, but she had some wounds on her body, and her arm was bleeding. It was obvious that Sukuna did not pay attention to Kugasaki Nobara when he was fighting with Fushiguro Megumi. Basically, Kugasaki Nobara was just an ant in front of Sukuna. Quote. Lan Shuyan sighed. He had already decided in his heart that he must open Geto's skull and use it to clean his shoes. Lan Shuyan was not angry because Yuji Itadori became like this, because he knew that Yuji Itadori would sign a contract with Sukuna and come back to life. Lan Shuyan was unhappy because he didn't change and ended up slapping the face of the high-ranking curse master. It's all Geto Itadori fault. Blue, you were right. They want to kill Yuji. Fushiguro Megumi knew that Lan Shuyan was coming. He did not ask where Lan Shuyan was, because Yuji had just explained the situation and then he fell down. Yuji asked me to tell you that he is very happy to meet us and hopes that we live a long life. Fushiguro Megumi clenched his fists. Perhaps it was from this time that Fushiguro Megumi has slowly changed. Stop talking nonsense and send the body back to Yuji. Lan Shuyan took out his cell phone from his pocket and started to make a call. He was calling the tool man Yidiji Gao. Hello, Mr. Yidiji, come and pick someone up. Lan Shuyan said and hung up the phone. Jujutsu High School. Morgue. Gojo Satoru, who received the message, has returned. Kugasaki Nobara and Fushiguro Megumi are being treated for their injuries, and only Lan Shuyan and Gojo Satoru are here. Just like the original novel, Gojo Satoru is very angry. He learned the general situation from Lan Shuyan and knew that 4 special class students appeared in the juvenile detention center that day, but he did not get the name of Geto Suguru from Lan Shuyan. Lan Shuyan did not intend to tell Gojo Satoru their names, but only their appearance. It's difficult to find the murderer. Just kill all the people above you. Gojo Satoru rarely gets angry like this. This makes Aikichi Jigao tremble beside him. Okay, add me in. Gojo-sensei. Lan Shuyan has been on Yuji Itadori's body. He kept staring at Yuji Itadori's dark chest, as if he wanted to see what the living area inside looked like. Unfortunately, he couldn't see anything at all. There were only ribs and various organs except the heart. Oh, Gojo Satoru was still surprised by Lan Shuyan's agreement. He had communicated with Fushiguro Megumi and knew what Lan Shuyan said at the time. Gojo Satoru did not blame Lan Shuyan for not stopping them from accepting the task. After all, exorcising cursed spirits was the duty of their sorcerers. Moreover, if there was only a newly generated special cursed spirit, then with Lan Shuyan there, it would not be a problem. Swish. At this moment, the automatic door of the morgue opened, and Iori Naoko walked in wearing high heels. It seems that you like that child very much. Woo. Ieri Glass looked at the position of Yuji Itadori's body. How about we talk about killing all the high-ranking sorcerers? Lan Shuyan was unhappy about being interrupted by Iori Naoko. When Yuji Itadori was resurrected, Gojo Satoru calmed down. Quote. Jirui Glass and Iji Gao both looked at Lan Shuyan, and their mouths twitched. You really aren't afraid of making things worse, right? Well, let's go, Lan. Gojo Satoru seemed to really have this intention, and he stood up with his hands in his pockets. Good, Gojo-sensei. Lan Shuyan stopped looking at the hole in Itadori Yuji's chest, and ran towards Gojo Satoru like a madman, and was about to leave with him arm in arm. The corners of Ieri Shoko's morbid eyes with dark circles twitched violently. As expected, there are students for every teacher. Let's not talk about Gojo Satoru for now. After all, he is the strongest sorcerer, but do you want to die if you go with one of your students? Ieri Shoko knew that Gojo Satoru had 4 students. But she didn't know how strong Lan Shuyan was, because as Lan Shuyan had guessed before, Gojo Satoru did not hand over the specific information about Lan Shuyan, but only Gojo Satoru and Yaga Masamiki knew it. Hey, Satoru, are you crazy? Are you really going to do it? Without thinking too much, Iori Naoko went over to block Gojo Satoru and Lan Shuyan. Aikichi Jigao's expression was as uncomfortable as if he had eaten something unspeakable. He bravely hid behind Iori Naoko, and it seemed that he also wanted to stop Gojo Satoru and Lan Shuyan. Well, teacher, Lan, what's going on now? At this moment, Yuji Itadori's voice suddenly came over. This made the noisy Ieri Shoko and Eiichi Kataka quiet down and look at Yuji Itadori's position. And Gojo Satoru also looked back. Lan Shuyan was full of disappointment. Oh, I can only think of a way to kill the high-level curse next time. When leaving the morgue, Lan Shuyan was alone. Gojo Satoru told him to temporarily conceal the news of Yuji Itadori's resurrection. They just need to rest and train in peace in the next period of time. Will I rest in peace? Are you kidding me? I have to find a way to stay with Yuji Itadori. What follows is a real-life story. I must kill this guy and see if I can gain the ability of inaction transformation. Wu Wei transformation. Able to transform other people's souls and manifest them in the flesh. Tisk tisk. How many female cursed spirits can be created like this? How about transforming Fushiguro Megumi into a girl? Lan Shuyan touched his chin and thought. Fushiguro Megumi with long black hair must be a very beautiful lady, right? But would Sukuna dislike Fushiguro Megumi's female body? Probably not, right? Hiss. If Sukuna goes in. Oh my god. Gender change. Female body, male soul. Plus a Sukuna. It's exciting just thinking about it. Lan Shuyan became very interested when he thought of this. This is another setting that can hit some people with strange habits. So, it's decided. Lan Shuyan took out his mobile phone and sent messages to Gojo Satoru frantically. One is for the Lord. I want to stay with Itadori Yuji to protect him. He is my good friend, good brother, close friend and relative. I absolutely don't want him to get hurt next time. No extra money is needed. Gojo Satoru looked at the dozens of messages in a minute and fell into deep thought. As expected of the original author, his typing speed is really fast. So Gojo Satoru directly replied to Lan Shuyan with a message. Okay, but you have to stay in the Jujutsu High School. Single quote. Lan Shuyan, is this an agreement or what? I don't charge any extra money, what do you want with a free bodyguard? After a long time, Gojo Satoru meant to stay in the technical high school first, and wait until he can help Yuji Itadori improve. Lan Shuyan rotated the phone at his fingertips like a gyroscope. In other words, Gojo Satoru wants to arrange for Yuji Itadori to train in controlling his cursed power by watching movies. Indeed, it is useless for me to accompany you now. And for me personally, the training of controlling the mantra is useless to me, because I don't have mantra normally, and I don't need to control the mantra after obtaining the bound mirror mantra. I just need to use my imagination and voice to launch the corresponding moves. Just when Lan Shuyan was talking to himself, Gojo Satoru sent another message, which made Lan Shuyan stop turning his phone and open line to read it. The message above was, intensify your training. Looking at the message, Lan Shuyan fell into silence. I remember telling Gojo Satoru how to repel the enemy, and he also knew that I should put another restraint on top of the heaven and curse binding. Why do you still let me train? I have already lost the growth that a sorcerer should have, and my upper and lower limits are like that. Lan Shuyan was very confused. He is right, your growth has been fixed, but your status as an ordinary person can be improved. All the contracts you sign are based on the activation of your abilities, so you can improve your basic fighting ability and adaptability experience, and at the same time, you have to improve your proficiency in the 3-section staff spell tool type. Although you are very courageous in testing the edge of the violation of the restraint, Gojo Satoru also knows a lot about restraints, and he found a loophole that can be captured from the restraints you mentioned. Qingshan Shuiji's voice suddenly appeared. This made Lan Shuyan stunned for a moment. So Gojo Satoru is also helping me to fix the bug of the restraint. Seriously, in Lan Shuyan's view, restraint is a kind of contract that can improve one's own ability and is used for equivalent exchange to fix bugs crazily. But most people really don't dare to fix bugs casually, because if they fail to fix them, there is a high possibility that the network connection will be interrupted, and there is even a chance that they will die directly. You cannot gain combat experience from the copied object. This combat experience should include spell experience from the copied object. You are really reckless. I and Gojo Satoru both saw that you copied Sukuna's ability after the binding began. It should be because you are more familiar with Sukuna's ability, right? After all, when you first met Yuji Itadori, you copied him once. If you come across one you don't understand, Even if you copy it, do you know what its capabilities are and how to use it? Therefore, when you lose your ability experience, you can only improve your own fighting experience. When dealing with an enemy you don't know, the cursed power you copy can also be used in your physical skills. Lan Shuyan could tell that Qingzhan Shuiji was very helpless. The other constraints were actually fine, but it was this one constraint of combat experience that became useless. Using Sukuna as an analogy, Lan Shuyan's original, mirror flower, was to obtain Sukuna's cursed power and techniques, as well as all the physical experience that Sukuna possessed. But the simplest way to describe the current, mirror flower, is, except for Sukuna's cursed power, techniques, and moves, nothing else can be obtained. So this is also the reason why Qingzhan Shuiji Gojo Satoru asked Lan Shuyan to strengthen his own physical skills. Even without techniques, as long as he can, if the cursed power is added to the body, it will not be so weak. After seeing the mirrored object use the ability, learning to use it is also a good idea. Lan Shuyan was silent, he just smiled. Don't understand the other party's ability. Would Lan Shuyan be stupid enough to use this as a constraint? It is said to be a bug. Lan Shuyan must have his own understanding. Having read the original work, he has enough understanding of the various main cursed spirit abilities, and Lan Shuyan's copying of Sukuna is not as simple as Qingzhan Shuiji said. Lan Shuyan knew that he was doomed to lose combat experience. This bondage may make him lose the experience of using the spell of copying the mirror image, but Lan Shuyan already had experience before. As long as Lan Shuyan shouts out or silently recites the name of the spell in his mind, the cursed power copied from his body will automatically be transferred into the copied spell and turned into the corresponding attack moves, and he can even do it faster than Sukuna. This conclusion comes from the first time he met Yuji Itadori in the final battle with Sukuna, who controlled Yuji Itadori's body. He used Water Moon. Lan Shuyan found that his Water Moon did not require the so-called spell experience to activate, as long as he silently recited the name of the spell. It omits the process of personally injecting the cursed power into the spell in the body, unlike the mirror flower, where there is an obvious process of injecting the cursed power into the spell. This experience is why Lan Shuyan dared to set this bondage. As for what happens if Lan Shuyan doesn't understand and has no way to know the opponent's spell and moves, it doesn't matter. Lan Shuyan has another way. I've said it. For a novelist's imagination, it's too easy to get a bug. Isn't it just a loan to buy a bondage? Who can't do it? Well, no need. I know my current abilities well. Lan Shuyan put his phone away and went straight to find Fushiguro Megumi and the others. They are probably feeling depressed right now. Lan Shuyan doesn't think it's necessary to train or anything like that. He already has actual combat experience. What he needs now is to wait for the target to come to him. Lan Shuyan feels that he is quite strong in bare-handed physical skills. After all, he has been loved by his grandfather since he was a child. That grandfather dotes on his grandson and can even break his grandson's ribs and send him to the hospital. It's really a blessing to have such a grandfather. Although he is not as good as Yuji Itadori now, Yuji Itadori's fighting skills are based on his own cursed power, while Lan Shuyan does not. The difference between Lan Shuyan's physical skills and Yuji Itadori's is that there is no way to use cursed power to strengthen his body. If the conditions are the same, Lan Shuyan is confident that he can completely defeat Yuji Itadori. As for the use of cursed tools, the first weapon that Lan Shuyan is interested in is the nunchaku. Came to another place. As Lan Shuyan thought, Fushiguro Megumi and Kugasaki Nobara were indeed feeling depressed, and they both sat on the steps. Hey, Fushiguro, Kugasaki. Lan Shuyan walked over to say hello. Lan, has the situation with Yuji been resolved? Fushiguro Wei looked up expressionlessly and asked Lan Shuyan. Well, it's been dealt with. Lan Shuyan also sat on the steps between them. Their injuries seemed to have recovered. Then Lan Shuyan found that Fushiguro Megumi and Kugasaki Nobara both moved their butts closer to Lan Shuyan. Let me make it clear first, I have no interest in men and human girls. Lan Shuyan's mouth twitched. What are you thinking about? No human girl would like you. Kugisaki Nobara glanced at Lan Shuyan. I don't want carbon-based creatures like human girls. What I want are all kinds of weird monster girls. Lan Shuyan clenched his fist and declared his fetish. This made Kugasaki Nobara and Fushiguro Megumi look at them with disgust, but they didn't move away. Because they were very hot, Lan Shuyan was always cool around him. Yo, Wei, why do you look more gloomy than before, like someone has died? At this time, Zenin Maki's voice sounded. Then came the panda in the original work who asked Zenin Maki a soul-searching question, and Fushiguro Megumi's introduction to this group of people. To be honest, hot-blooded anime has a sand sculpture process. I'm so sorry to come to you in your situation. But now we need your help. The panda began to explain. Kyoto Sisters Exchange Meeting. Lan Shuyan has no complaints about this exchange meeting. Megumi Fushiguro and Nobara Kugasaki also joined in. But in fact, Zenin Maki proposed training for the two of them, which is good for both Nobara Kugasaki and Megumi Fushiguro. In the first grade, the only one who is really good at physical skills is Yuji Itadori. What do others say? Megumi Fushiguro is okay. Without strengthening himself with cursed power, his physical skills are better than Lan Shuyan. But Nobara Kugasaki is not that good. Now Lan Shuyan can beat her like a fool. Training started the next day. Maki Zenin was unarmed, and so was Megumi Fushiguro. As for Nobara Kugasaki, she was handed over to Panda. Qingshan Shueiji sat dignifiedly on the stairs not far away, supporting her chin with her palms, and looking at them with Lan Shuyan. Let me test your physical ability first. Zenin Maki looked at Fushiguro Megumi. Being stared at by a special grade cursed spirit, Zenin Maki felt a little stressed. Lan Shuyan had introduced Qingshan Shueiji's existence, and there was no danger, otherwise they would have run away by now. How should I put it? Fushiguro Megumi's physical ability is very good, but he is really too weak in front of Zenin Maki. Zenin Maki and Fushiguro Shire have the same heaven and curse binding, but generally speaking, because they are twin sisters, they are not strong. But they can still completely defeat ordinary cursors. The unnecessary movements are too frequent, and too much thinking causes the movements to stop. Another point. Why is your lower body so unstable? I don't remember you having a girlfriend, or have you been rewarding yourself recently? Zenin Maki looked at Fushiguro Megumi with a look of disgust. Fushiguro Megumi was stunned for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth twitched wildly. He looked at Qingshan Shueiji who was sitting next to Lan Shuyan not far away. Zenin Maki also looked in the direction he was looking. The 8 eyes met, and the air was quiet in an instant. No way, Wei, you actually didn't even let go of the cursed spirit. And wasn't that Lan Shuyan's cursed spirit? Are all the handsome guys playing so openly? Zenin Maki was shocked. Okay. Lan Shuyan was fine, because she didn't know, but did Fushiguro Megumi have this hobby? I'm not. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. Fushiguro Megumi immediately denied it 3 times. It's because Miss Qingshan makes breakfast for Lan, and Lan always drags the 3 of us to eat together. The food mixed with Miss Qingshan's cursed power always makes us have diarrhea. I squatted again this morning for an hour, and my legs are numb. Fushiguro Wei explained immediately. He is not Lan Shuyan. He is not Ning Kaichan. Is that so? I feel fine after eating it. Lan Shuyan was a little confused. Is there such a thing? Qingshan Shueiji smiled and said nothing. Well, never mind. It is best not to eat food that has been mixed with other people's cursed energy. I remember Otsutsuki said that some cursed spirits' cursed powers are extremely poisonous to others. After all, Otsutsuki's Rika would also cook for him. Zenin Maki waved her hand. After all, they were also the first batch of victims. The victims came from Otsutsuki Yuta. They ate what Rika cooked and almost died of poisoning. Quote. Fushiguro Megumi was silent. They wanted to refuse, but Lan Shuyan's enthusiasm made it impossible for them to refuse. Next, Blue Book words. I think it's necessary to train you too. Zenin Maki pointed at Lan Shuyan. No, I don't think it's necessary. After all, my physical skills should be stronger than any of you without the blessing of cursed power. Lan Shuyan refused. As a junior, you should humbly accept the requests of your seniors. Zenuan Maki hooked her finger at Lan Shuyan. It wasn't that Zenuan Maki looked down on Lan Shuyan, but just now Lan Shuyan looked at her and Fushiguro Megumi fighting, and there was a kind of contempt in his eyes. This made Zenuan Maki very curious, why Lan Shuyan had the confidence to show such contempt for their fight. Well, Then please give me more advice. Senior. Lan Shuyan grinned, stood up, patted his butt and walked towards Zen and Maki. Soon, Lan Shuyan stood directly opposite Zen and Maki. Come on. Zen and Maki took a stance. Lan Shuyan moved his feet and took a small horse stance, then rushed towards Zen and Maki like an arrow from a bow, and hit Zen and Maki's chest with a top elbow. This made Zen and Maki's eyes suddenly widen. She could see a burst of impact in the air. Therefore, Lan Shuyan's elbow stayed a few millimeters in front of Zen and Maki's chest, and even before it touched her, the impact made her turbulent waves become turbulent, the kind of physical air impact. Naive. Zenuan Maki's reaction was also ridiculously fast. She actually grabbed Lan Shuyan's wrist that was attacking with her elbow, and used the force to pull it back. The elbow instantly turned into a straight punch. Hey, isn't this force too outrageous? Lan Shuyan's mouth twitched, and he forcibly pulled his elbow into a straight punch. At this time, Zenuan Maki's body also moved, and a tumbling movement seemed to hang on his arm, with her legs clamped around Lan Shuyan's neck. More importantly, a concave position of Zenuan Maki's tight sports pants happened to be in front of Lan Shuyan's mouth because of the angle. Zenuan Maki also wanted to use the inertia of twisting her body to turn Lan Shuyan's entire body to the ground, but she didn't expect Lan Shuyan's lower body to be ridiculously stable. With the degree of her letting go, she really couldn't twist Lan Shuyan. The result was that something soft was rubbing against Lan Shuyan's mouth. Then, the next second, Lan Shuyan and Zen and Maki were both silent. Zen and Maki silently loosened his legs and fell to the ground, then silently loosened his hands that were locked on Lan Shuyan's arms, then stepped back a little and turned around to adjust his glasses, his eyes a little evasive. On the contrary, Lan Shuyan ran directly to Qingshan Shuiji, took the mineral water on the stairs, raised his head and drank a big sip, then gargled frantically. Ah Tui. After spitting out the water, continued to drink it in and rinse it out. Back and forth several times. Ah, Miss Qingshan, I have a dirty mouth. A foul smell. It tastes salty. Lan Shuyan burst into tears. He urgently needs Qingshan Shuiji's comfort now. Looking at the movement on Lan Shuyan's side, Zenuan Maki, who was covering her lower body, twitched violently. What a foul smell. What a salty smell. I just washed this morning and haven't had a rest today. I'll cut you. Zen and Maki rushed towards Lan Shuyan with a big knife in hand. Lan Shuyan, who was seeking comfort from Qingshan Shuiji, was shocked and turned around and ran away. Panda, Fushiguro Megumi, Inamaki Spine, and Kugasaki Nobara all looked at Lan Shuyan, who was being chased and chopped by Zen and Maki with a knife with expressionless faces. Brother, I have to say that you are the only one who can turn a welfare story into a horror story. Lan Shuyan buried his head in Qingshan Shuiji's huge chest. Qingshan Shuiji squinted her eyes, showed a gentle motherly smile and stroked Lan Shuyan's head. Lan Shuyan was not caught up by Zen and Maki in the end. Although Zen and Maki was an incomplete heaven and tyrant, she was really hostile to Lan Shuyan just now, so she launched the mirror flower without saying a word. Originally, according to Lan Shuyan's thought, Zen and Maki, who was also heaven and curse, should not be copied by the mirror, but in fact it succeeded, which proved that his speculation was correct. But Lan Shuyan just felt wrong. The first kiss of his life was given to the abalone through the cloth. So, what did you feel just now? Qingshan Shuiji asked Lan Shuyan in a gentle voice. I just said it. It smells fishy. It tastes salty. Lan Shuyan answered without even raising his head. Qingshan Shuiji slapped Lan Shuyan's head hard. She knew clearly that Lan Shuyan had deliberately made Zenuan Maki angry. What? I'm kidding. Well, although I didn't get any information about the technique, I only got her physical abilities. I remember the feeling of being bound. Later, when I copy other objects, I can transform the cursed energy into physical abilities. In this way, I don't have to learn how to use the cursed energy on my body. I can just use the cursed energy of the object to set up a bond. Lan Shuyan responded to Qingshan Shuiji's question without even raising his head. It's so soft and fragrant here, but a little cold. The air I breathe in is cold, the kind that freezes your lungs. Zen and Maki is bound by heaven and curse, and her body doesn't have much cursed energy, even to the point where even the cursed spirit can't see it. So, when copying Zen and Maki, his bondage seemed to have a bug. It directly copied Zenin Maki's heaven and curse. And in an instant, the process of Zenin Maki's cursed energy, which was not normally in the heaven and curse state, being bound into physical abilities, broke out. And Lan Shuyan made his body remember that process at that moment. I am really curious. You knew nothing about the world of magic before, but you can understand everything so quickly. Black flash, cursed power, cursed spirits, cursed tools and more. You don't need anyone to explain these to you, you will understand. I even thought of directly copying this girl who was also bound by the sky and letting my body remember the feeling of letting the curse power flow through the body and strengthen the body. Qingshan Shuiji's doting eyes really made Fushiguro Wei and others who were resting on the side feel pain. They thought that Lan Shuyan had found a cursed spirit mother. But they were also very surprised. Lan Shuyan's behavior just now actually had such a big purpose. How outrageous is his ability? Is he really challenging the upper and lower limits? Hearing this, Lan Shuyan suddenly reacted. He looked at Qingshan Shuiji in confusion. How did she know this process? It is impossible for her to know the process in his body at that moment just by looking at it, right? Ah, don't look at me like that. After all, I have eyes too. Qingshan Shuiji smiled charmingly, and her whole body floated up. Then she turned into a white light and poured directly into the living realm in Lan Shuyan's palm. Qingshan Shuiji's words made Lan Shuyan very confused. To be honest, Lan Shuyan felt that he really knew nothing about Qingshan Shuiji. But Qingshan Shuiji knew him so well that Lan Shuyan was a little scared. Well, senior, you've seen it too, I shouldn't need your training anymore. Lan Shuyan didn't think about it anymore, he would go and get information about Qingshan Shuiji from Gojo Satoru. So Lan Shuyan looked at Zenin Maki. He was brought here by Zenin Maki and the others to train. Humph, sure, Zenin Maki was still a little angry. Although she was a man, she was still very upset to be despised by Lan Shuyan. It had nothing to do with whether he liked her or not. Well, Fushiguro, Kugasaki, you guys do your best. I'm going to bed. I didn't sleep last night, so I'm a little sleepy. Lan Shuyan patted his butt and left here. But he stopped after a few steps because there was a strong man and a girl who looked very similar to Zenin Maki in front of him. Tudo Aoi and Zenin Maki. Yo, the kid from Tokyo. Tudo Aoi looked Lan Shuyan in the eye, after all, they were the same height. But Lan Shuyan yawned after taking a look, then walked past Tudo Aoi, ignoring them. Lan Shuyan had no interest in Tudo Aoi's patting. Let's wait for Yuji Itadori to return before letting the two friends pat each other. But Tudo Aoi didn't plan to let Lan Shuyan go, because he already knew Lan Shuyan, and knew that Lan Shuyan possessed a special grade cursed spirit and heaven and curse binding. After all, 4 special grade ones appeared last time, and this had to be reported. Being able to survive in the hands of so many special grade ones would definitely be targeted. By the way, Lan Shuyan seemed to remember that they should come tomorrow, right? Why did they come a day earlier? Well, forget it. It's none of my business. I have no interest in carbon-based life. Lan Shuyan turned slightly and looked at Dongtang Kui beside him. His fist went straight through Lan Shuyan's eyes, causing a gust of wind. Lan Shuyan was able to dodge this obviously probing attack. Let me ask you a question, do you like? Dongtang Aoi retracted his fist, and his fist made a cracking sound. I don't like human girls. Female cursed spirits are the love of my life. Before Dongtang Kui finished asking, Lan Shuyan gave a predicted response. This really confused Dongtang Kui. He was stunned, even blinking his eyes. Is it okay to like female cursed spirits? It's outrageous. Well, it seems that you and I are not compatible. Let me correct your thoughts. I even want you to be a fan of Takahashi. Tudo Aoi smiled brightly and powerfully. The cursed power in his body was bursting. Miss Qingshan, Lan Shuyan sighed, and a floating cloud suddenly appeared in his hand. The moment the floating cloud appeared, Lan Shuyan's body also exploded with the same curse power as Dongtang Kui, which made Dongtang Kui stunned for a moment. What surprised Dongtang Kui even more was that at this time, white visible curse power surged out of Lan Shuyan's palm. Lan Shuyan transformed all the curse power copied from Dongtang Kui into the tyrant physique of heaven and curse binding, and his strength became very strong. Even the floating cloud in his hand burst out with the same white curse power. Hello, is this true? You fool, make me happy. Dongtang Kui's voice stopped abruptly before she finished speaking. Because Lan Shuyan had already waved the Yuyun in his hand, the positive energy of the two merged into one, and then Dongtang Kui saw countless white lightnings exploding. When the power dissipated, Lan Shuyan directly took back Yuyun, yawned and turned away. Please tell your Kyoto principal that they plotted against me last time, which made me very unhappy. Lan Shuyan yawned and left. And Tudo Aoi did not chase after him. As for Zenin Shinyi, she was sweating coldly and her face was full of excitement. Tudo Aoi looked at the side of her. The corridor under the building, or half of the building, was completely shattered. Even Fushiguro Megumi and others who noticed something was wrong here widened their eyes. As this, Lan Shuyan's, viewing flowers in the mirror. Zenin Maki was very shocked. For the first time in his life, Tudo Aoi felt surprised by someone's attack. But he felt very excited. Most people's curse power comes from the abdomen, and then spreads from the abdomen to the whole body, but that guy. In an instant, all the cursed power disappeared, as if it had become all the power attached to the body, just like the heaven and tyrant that was circulated, but it seemed incomplete. Tudo Aoi muttered to himself. After leaving there, Lan Shuyan really went to sleep directly. However, Lan Shuyan really felt that Yuyun, who relied on strength to exert his power, was really strong. You are really messing around. You can just make a contract like binding easily, right? Are you really not afraid? The existence of heaven and curse binding is innate. I really don't understand how you can bind it. Qingshan Shuiji was really speechless to Lan Shuyan. None of the mirror flower and water moon, holders of the previous 2 generations of heaven and curse binding, played it so fancy. The restraints I set were the cursed powers and techniques I obtained from Tudo Aoi. What does it have to do with me, Lan Shuyan? And in fact, I didn't really sign the heaven and curse binding, but used the mirror image spell power and rituals that I copied to bind myself and turn them into various abilities of my body. Lan Shuyan yawned in response. Having obtained the cursed power of Tudo Aoi just now, Lan Shuyan directly bound it into a similar existence to heaven and tyrant. This way of using it means losing Tudo Aoi's technique and all the cursed power, and all of it is transformed into the physique of heaven and tyrant. The key is that this kind of binding only targets the cursed power and technique of the current copy image. It has nothing to do with Lan Shuyan himself. Qingshan Shuiji was silent after listening to Lan Shuyan's response. What this child said makes sense. But as soon as you understand the characteristics of Zenin Maki's heaven and curse binding, you immediately borrow it to bind. You are really fearless. Who in the world of curse dares to set bindings at will? You just play with a single ability in various ways. In fact, there are really people who dare to set them at will, and even change the conditions of the field technique and field conditions at will. Lan Shuyan learned it from Sukuna. Right, and Sukuna is very good at binding. That, Miss Qingshan, why don't you come out? I want to hold you while sleeping. Lan Shuyan was in bed, he was very sleepy but couldn't fall asleep. Thinking about it carefully, it was because Qingshan Shuiji was missing by his side. Qingshan Shuiji didn't refuse. She came out of her birth field directly, and then lay down next to Lan Shuyan. Lan Shuyan hugged Qingshan Shuiji without hesitation and buried his head in her chest. Qingshan Shuiji revealed a doting look from a mother and patted Lan Shuyan's back with one hand. I don't know how long I slept. Lan Shuyan was confused when he opened his eyes. Because at this moment he was not in bed, but in the air, and Qingshan Shuiji was not there either. The surrounding scenery was rapidly receding, and no scene could be seen clearly. From here, the speed of moving forward must be ridiculously fast. What's going on? Lan Shuyan was stunned. How could he go to heaven while sleeping? I don't know either. What surprised Lan Shuyan was that there was another Yuji Itadori on the other side who responded to Lan Shuyan. Why was Yuji Itadori here? So, Lan Shuyan looked at the long legs between the two of them. Gojo Satoru's long legs. Well, I'll show you some special grade curse spirits. At the same time, I also want you to try some things, Lan. After all, I, the teacher, also want to know if you can do that. Gojo Satoru responded calmly to the questions of Lan Shuyan and Itadori Yuji. This made Lan Shuyan's face full of question marks. It shouldn't be, right? Rohu. This plot, No way, no way. The appearance time of Todo Aoi and the others has been changed, and now it has changed again. Lan Shuyan felt that he should have changed the plot. After all, he and Rohu had met with Sha Yuji, and Rohu's body should not recover so quickly, right? You know, Rohu was killed by Lan Shuyan's sudden attack at that time. This is not to say that Rohu was very weak at that time. After all, Rohu's strength was still comparable to a few fingers of Sukuna, but the mirror copy of Sukuna with only one finger is not strong enough to kill it. But the key is that Luhu didn't take Lan Shuyan seriously at that time, and Sukuna's slash was invisible, so Luhu was hit. So, Lan Shuyan is very sure that Luhu will never recover so quickly. Soon, Lan Shuyan and Itadori Yuji were brought to a lake by Gojo Satoru, and he and Itadori Yuji stood directly on the water. Lan Shuyan immediately looked around. This place and this location, no matter how you look at it, it's Luhu's plot. And in fact, what surprised Lan Shuyan was that the enemy was really Luhu. How is this possible? Didn't I chop this guy into pieces? How could he recover so quickly? Lan Shuyan was shocked, right? Oh, it seems that this guy is indeed one of the special grade ones that appeared that day. Gojo Satoru grinned and touched Lan Shuyan's head. This made Lan Shuyan slap Gojo Satoru's palm away in disgust again. Wow, Mount Fuji. This guy has Mount Fuji on his head. Yujin Itadori continued his funny remarks. As for the opposite side, Luhu, at this moment, he was already covered with wounds, but he was still holding on to the two people beside Gojo Satoru. As expected, Sukuna's container is not dead. Moreover, one Gojo Satoru is already a difficult problem, and now there comes another Lan Shuyan. Luhu's eyes are solemn. Hey, Fuji-san, why were you able to recover so quickly? Lan Shuyan asked Luhu curiously. According to the original story, in tonight's plot, Luhu was rescued by Wayu with only his head left. Later, although Luhu spent a lot of time recovering his body, their conversation proved that Luhu only recovered his body, but his cursed power did not recover much. Who knows? Luhu showed his big black teeth and did not explain to Lan Shuyan. Do not waste time. Please start liberating your territory. I need to use your field to explain to my students. Gojo Satoru interrupted their conversation. You really act so relaxed. Gojo Satoru. Luhu looked at Gojo Satoru, and he was not afraid. Well, he is indeed relaxed. After all, you are very weak. Lan Shuyan answered directly on behalf of Gojo Satoru. This made Gojo Satoru look at Lan Shuyan with a question mark on his face. No, Lan, why are you stealing my lines? And Luhu exploded. A little ghost who only knows how to copy other people's images actually said it was weak. Domain expanded, iron enclosed mountain. As soon as Luhu's domain expanded, the three of Lan Shuyan were immediately surrounded by black, followed by the appearance of enclosed rocks and magma. Alright, 5 class times start now. Field expansion is the ultimate killer move of the sorcerer. It consumes a lot of cursed energy when used, but in exchange, it is guaranteed to hit the target. Gojo Satoru began to explain the various methods of field expansion to Itadori Yuji and Lan Shuyan. Chapter 31. After Gojo Satoru finished explaining, he looked directly at Lan Shuyan. This made Lan Shuyan's face full of question marks. So, why are you looking at me? Lan Shuyan was confused. I asked Yuji Itadori to come here so that he could experience the field. The reason why I asked you to come here is to teach you how to deal with the domain. After all, the constraints you set include the condition that you cannot deploy the domain constraints. Gojo Satoru looked at Lan Shuyan. The tone in his voice seemed to have a deep meaning. Well, it's not that I can't. It's that I can't. It is also possible to forcefully expand the domain, but it requires a price to be paid, because I will pay a specified price for the use. This made Lan Shuyan grin. I, Lan Shuyan, am very good at catching bugs. Don't underestimate the various weird ideas of a novelist. Lan Shuyan's answer made Gojo Satoru stunned for a moment. But he soon laughed. Never break the constraints you set for yourself at will, otherwise the consequences will be serious. Well, what I want to talk about now is your other ability. Gojo Satoru pointed at the position of Lan Shuyan's hands. I know, you mean, viewing flowers in the mirror, right? It can break the space, and this space means concept. Just like you said before, if I can break your infinite distance, then I should be able to break the domain. After all, the expansion of the domain can also be called space. Lan Shuyan's answer was very clear, and even Gojo Satoru was surprised. He really didn't expect that Lan Shuyan could understand his ability like this. That's right, this is what Gojo Satoru meant at this time. Only Itadori Yujin was confused when he heard it. He understood the previous areas, but he didn't understand Lan Shuyan at all. Break the domain. Just with this kid. Luhu also heard it and waved his hand. A large number of rocks rushed directly to where Gojo Satoru and the others were. But Gojo Satoru just raised his hand and destroyed these rocks. I have no problem breaking through the closed field, but the other problem is that once I enter the field, I will be attacked and I will not have time to break through the enemy's field. Lan Shuyan is very clear about his shortcomings in facing other people's fields. Well, since you have thought of this problem, you should have also thought of a way to deal with it, right? Gojo Satoru looked at Lan Shuyan with great interest. This time the sudden teaching seemed to have changed, and it became Lan Shuyan's own understanding of the field. Because all along, Lan Shuyan had never been exposed to the world of spells before, but he seemed to know a lot about the world of spells, and he also asked Qingshan Shuiji, and Qingshan Shuiji also said that he had not taught Lan Shuyan those things. This also made Gojo Satoru speculate that after Lan Shuyan opened the Mirror Flower and Water Moon, for the first time, he inherited the memories of successive users, otherwise there would be no way to explain Lan Shuyan's various understandings and various nonsense. Well, you will know after you see it. Lan Shuyan left Gojo Satoru's infinity directly and was exposed to Luhu's domain. Idiot, he actually took the initiative to step out of Gojo Satoru's infinite range. Shine, Luhu is very confident in his domain, because ordinary sorcerers will be burned to ashes the moment they enter. And after the last fight, Luhu and Sha Yuji have already guessed the binding conditions that Lan Shuyan will use, and he has just obtained new information. That is, after Lan Shuyan copies the enemy's mirror image, he can't use the domain. So, under all this premise, Lan Shuyan, who will definitely be hit when he enters his domain, will definitely not be able to resist, even if he uses the spell to copy him. The domain has a bonus effect on him. But, the next scene made Luhu stunned, because Lan Shuyan disappeared the moment he stepped out of Gojo Satoru's infinite range. He really disappeared like that. No, that's not right. He started running the moment he came out, and he was running very fast. Luhu looked around with one eye, trying to find Lan Shuyan. Because he could hear footsteps and explosions around him. Although I don't know why you can use such a strong speed, but in my domain, the must-hit effect will make you die without a burial place. Luhu was still very confident. He directly activated the must-hit effect of the domain. This must-hit effect only requires him to use the spell, then he does not need to control it, and the enemies in the domain will be hit by the must-hit effect. But soon, Luhu's eyes widened, because the must-hit effect of the domain did not come true. Or in other words, the existence of the enemy could not be captured in the domain. Instead, all attacks fell on Gojo Satoru. How is it possible? How is it possible? Luhu roared in disbelief. Yo, don't be so angry. The top of Mount Fuji. At this time, Lan Shuyan stood behind Luhu, which made Luhu turn around and launch the spell immediately, but the must-hit effect of the field automatically attacked Gojo Satoru's position again. Luhu Yanmagma couldn't think straight. What on earth was going on? Teacher, what's going on? Didn't you say that in the domain, people who don't know the domain will definitely be hit by the domain's must-hit effect? Quote. Yuji Itadori was very surprised at Lan Shuyan's speed at this moment. But he didn't understand why it turned out like this. The must-hit effect was only aimed at them, not Lan Shuyan. I see. You were really crazy. Lan, Gojo Satoru has already seen it. Very simple. Lan used the mirror image copied from the enemy to bind it, and directly turned the magic power and spells obtained from the enemy into purely super physical ability. Gojo Satoru explained it to Yuji Itadori. When Yuji Itadori was with Lan Shuyan, he already knew what Heaven and Curse binding was and what types it was, so he could understand it. So, why does the guaranteed hit effect have no effect on blue? Yuji Itadori fully demonstrates that he is the supporting role. A normal human or animal, no matter how weak, will have a certain amount of curse power on them, the only difference is more or less. This is why some ordinary people can see the vague figure of the cursed spirit, while others cannot. If they are covered by the field, then the field's guaranteed effect will also be triggered. As for Lan Shuyan, he did not have any curse power at this moment. There is none at all of it has become his physical ability. A person who has no magical power will be judged as something else in the area. For example, a stone or a piece of paper. So, at this moment, Lan Shuyan was like a lifeless creature. Then, the guaranteed hit effect of the field will have no effect at all. Gojo Satoru laughed happily. As expected, Lan Shuyan is really suitable to be a sorcerer. And Gojo Satoru roughly guessed the source of Lan Shuyan's idea, which should be from Zenin Maki. After all, Gojo Satoru also knew about the Kyoto Sister Exchange meeting, and Zenin Maki had contact with the first-year students. And Gojo Satoru's answer made Itadori Yuji suddenly realize. Well, although he seemed to understand, it seemed that he didn't understand anything. But Lu Hu understood, and his face was ferocious. The heaven and curse, that is equal to the tyrant. How is it possible? Lu Hu was instantly furious. He rushed directly towards Lan Shuyan, wanting to fight with Lan Shuyan with physical skills. Looking at the oncoming Lu Hu, Lan Shuyan grinned. His body instantly disappeared from the spot, and the next second he directly hit Lu Hu's stomach with an elbow, accompanied by the sound of flesh being torn apart. Lu Hu's entire body turned into a cannonball and flew backwards, smashing directly into the stone wall at the end of the area, and a large amount of magma splashed all around. This is what it means to elbow someone in the heart. What was that this morning? It was instantly straightened by Zenin Maki. Lan Shuyan was very excited. To be honest, he really liked the feeling of being punched in the flesh. Wow! As for Lu Hu, he crawled out from the rubble of the stone wall. He covered his stomach with one hand and his mouth with the other, vomiting blood crazily. Hateful! What a terrifying power! Lu Hu's eyes widened with anger. But Lan Shuyan did not stop his attack. Lan Shuyan's body was as fast as the wind, and his movements were as swift as lightning. Every step he took was accompanied by powerful force, and the ground was directly shattered. Lu Hu obviously did not intend to sit and wait for death, and directly met Lan Shuyan's attack. But Lan Shuyan performed Bajikwan to perfection, and every punch hit the flesh, with the force of thunder and lightning, and attacked Lu Hu like a storm. Under Lan Shuyan's attack, Lu Hu retreated step by step, in a miserable state. Lan Shuyan was extremely fast, and Lu Hu could not dodge at all, so he could only bear it. But every punch of Lan Shuyan hit him like a hammer, causing him severe pain. It was unbearable, and Lu Hu was hit like a balloon and floated around. Lu Hu wanted to fight back, but Lan Shuyan's attacks were continuous like the tide. Lu Hu was completely suppressed and had no power to fight back. Lu Hu's eyes were gradually filled with horror. He never thought that Lan Shuyan could use physical skills to force him to such a point. Boom! Lan Shuyan's last. He directly hit Lu Hu's flying body with an iron mountain backrest again. Under Lan Shuyan's fierce attack, Lu Hu's body flew backwards again, and the whole messy body was embedded in the rock wall of the field again. Lan Shuyan fell to the ground with a steady breath, as if the previous battle had no effect on him. Woohoo! Sure enough, using the cursed power of the special grade cursed spirit and the spell to sign the heaven and curse binding, to transform into pure physical ability is really powerful. Lan Shuyan hasn't had such a good time fighting for a long time. Of course, Lan Shuyan also knows that his way of binding is not suitable for any opponent. For example, the expansion of the real person's domain, because it touches the soul, it has nothing to do with whether there is cursed power. For example, the expansion of Sukuna's domain, it is an indiscriminate covering slash. Of course, Gojo Satoru's domain expansion is also very tricky. It has nothing to do with cursed power, but directly injects a lot of useless information into your brain. How is this possible? How is this possible? I am a new human. A new human. I am in the field. There is absolutely no way I can lose to a monkey. Lu Hu's body was really horrible at this time, with many dents from fist marks, and many teeth were missing. His body was really bloody, like a stream of water. Well, I know you don't accept it. Lan Shuyan directly took out the 3-section staff Yuyun. Now you can use the effect of the domain that will definitely hit you, because Yuyun has his own cursed power, and your domain can lock me. Lan Shuyan swung the nunchaku and walked towards Luhu step by step. Yuji Itadori, who was watching from the side, had his eyes wide open. He was sure that if he faced Lan Shuyan now, he would have absolutely no chance of winning. The feeling of powerlessness that he had felt with the finger curse spirit at that time rose again. Hisahito, don't be discouraged. You are different from Lan. The owners of Mirror Flower Water Moon and Mirror Viewing Flowers in the past generations are all very outrageous. The first generation slaughtered all the cursed spirits in China by himself, and the second generation could even suppress the cursed spirits so that they dared not mess around in China. The current Lan is the peak Lan, and you have unlimited progress. Gojo Satoru seemed to know what Itadori Yuji was thinking now, and his tone was very gentle. No matter what others think or say, Gojo Satoru is really doing a good job in fulfilling his role as a teacher. This was decided when he lost his friend Geto Suguru. If Lan Shuyan heard it, he would definitely say, "Ah, right. Itadori Yuji is running behind Itadori Yuji. The kind that can't stop for a moment. Well, I will try my best. I will never let my friends fall into the same predicament as before." Yuji Itadori immediately regained his confidence. He was not the kind of person who would give in easily. Then, they looked at Lan Shuyan's position again. At this moment, Lan Shuyan had stopped in front of Luhu with his nunchaku. Although Luhu looked really embarrassed just now, in fact, nothing happened. The body of the cursed spirit will recover soon under the healing of the reversal technique. It's just the loss of cursed power. After all, Lan Shuyan just used his fists without using Yuyun, and he didn't use Jingding Fist and Black Flash like Yuji Itadori. The lethality is limited. Do you think humans are monkeys? Think you are strong in your field? A mere cursed spirit, a male cursed spirit that's not even a female cursed spirit. Lan Shuyan stared down at Luhu. That's right. At this moment, Lan Shuyan directly transformed the hatred of Luhu for not being a female curse spirit into the positive energy of his palm, and also led Yuyun's curse power to undergo a positive energy transformation. Luhu was dumbfounded. He felt so aggrieved. I'm a male curse spirit, what did I do to provoke you? Especially since you're discriminating against love, right? So, why don't you use the guaranteed hit effect to attack me? But Lan Shuyan ignored Luhu's reaction and stepped directly on Luhu's head, forcibly pressing his head to the ground with a powerful force. Ah, just a monkey, Luhu screamed directly, and a large amount of magma and rocks rushed directly towards Lan Shuyan, but the target was Lan Shuyan's hands and Yuyun, as well as Gojo Satoru and Itadori Yuji, who were not far away. This made Lan Shuyan grin, and he kicked Luhu up directly. Even Luhu couldn't react to this speed. And Lan Shuyan smiled very ferociously. The veins on his arm holding Yuyun bulged, and his legs directly took a sideways horse stance. The momentum bursting out of the whole person made Luhu's face change drastically in the air. Flowers in the mirror. Lan Shuyan swung the three-section staff Yuyun, and the moment he swung it, it seemed as if the space was distorted, and the white positive energy wrapped around Yuyun seemed to have some kind of grasping power that was competing with the power of Lan Shuyan's swing. Then, it seemed that Lan Shuyan's power was superior, and the space captured by Yuyun's white positive energy began to crack, and even the domain that was close to Lan Shuyan was distorted and shattered. Ah! Lan Shuyan screamed, veins popping out all over his body. Boom! A sound like a sonic boom echoed, mixed with the sound of a broken mirror. The next second, Luhu's entire domain was directly twisted and shattered, and it seemed as if there was a terrifying gravity on the wandering cloud that hit the fragments of the entire domain, and as Lan Shuyan swung it, it hit Luhu's body together. As the space shattered, the flower buds composed of white lightning splashed. It didn't make any terrifying noises. Instead, it was the sound of an ordinary balloon exploding. At the moment of being hit by Yuyun, Luhu's entire body exploded like fireworks, and blood and flesh splashed out and turned into streams of light, even piercing through various things by the lake. Trees, land, stones. From here, we can see how terrifying the power of this attack is. Crash. At the moment when Lan Shuyan broke Luhu's domain and body, Gojo Satoru appeared directly and pinched Luhu's head. Well, I still have something to ask it, so let's keep its head for now. Lan. Gojo Satoru looked at Lan Shuyan. This made Lan Shuyan spread his hands, indicating that it was up to you. Then Lan Shuyan, Gojo Satoru, and Itadori Yujin landed on the shore. Now it's time for questions. I've heard about your appearances from that day. Lan said there's a sorcerer with long black hair, a fake smile, and wearing a black monk's outfit, right? Gojo Satoru pulled his eye straps, revealing his blue eyes staring at Luhu. Although Lan Shuyan didn't reveal the identities of Luhu and Shiujiya that day, he did describe their appearances. And Gojo Satoru has confirmed that Shiujiya's body is not there. Even if it's corrupted, there should be bones, right? But in fact, there are none. In other words, because of Lan Shuyan's appearance, many of the plots may change later. Kill me. Just a monkey. Luhu obviously wouldn't cooperate. Gojo Satoru loosened his grip on Luhu's head, letting it fall to the ground. Then Gojo Satoru stepped on it. Miscellaneous cultivation. Just a cursed spirit. Gojo Satoru widened his eyes, and the murderous intent that burst out of him made Yuji Itadori and Lan Shuyan break out in cold sweats. To be honest, Lan Shuyan was not afraid, but was really frightened by Gojo Satoru's sudden murderous intent. It was obvious that Gojo Satoru was very angry now. That's all. Teacher, look over there. Lan Shuyan pointed to a place where there was a cliff high up. There were two black shadows on the cliff. Gojo Satoru looked over and he also found the two figures. Then the next second, Gojo Satoru's entire body disappeared from the spot. The speed was very fast, but in the eyes of Lan Shuyan, who was still in the heaven and curse tyrant state, he could still see it clearly. Gojo Satoru was obviously chasing after the figure. Well, Lan Shuyan squatted and poked Luhu's head with the side of Yuyun. He looked at Luhu's neck curiously, or the area close to his chin. How do you speak when you have lost your throat and vocal cords? Isn't this scientific? Lan Shuyan said as he changed the direction and directly stabbed it into Xiaoxi's neck and throat, and then the other end came out of Luhu's mouth, just like threading the head through. Yuji Itadori was stunned. No, Lan, after we know about the existence of the world of magic, science no longer exists, right? Yuji Itadori made a suitable complaint. This made Lan Shuyan turn his head and give Yuji Itadori a cold look, and Yuji Itadori also looked at Lan Shuyan. The end of science is metaphysics, and metaphysics is the explanation of all things that cannot be understood, or irrational. Lan Shuyan withdrew his ability, and it was useless to maintain it. I said, right, leaky coral. Lan Shuyan looked back at his Yuyun, and then was a little confused. Where is my coral head? Where is my Mount Fuji head? Where is my big head? Lan Shuyan looked at the empty Yuyun and hurriedly stood up and looked around. And Yuji Itadori also hurriedly looked around, but there was no figure around. Lan, could it be that he is already dead and turned into ashes? It's just that we were talking and didn't notice it. Yuji Itadori immediately came up with an explanation. But Lan Shuyan stared at the ground where he was squatting. No, he was rescued by the cursed spirit. Lan Shuyan really had to sigh that Luhu was really lucky. He was rescued twice. Although both times only his head was left. Originally, Lan Shuyan thought that Gojo Satoru went to chase the two figures, and Luhu would definitely be safe. Even if he was released from the state, it didn't matter. Anyway, he only had a head left, and Yuji Itadori could still defeat him. But Lan Shuyan really didn't expect that Wyu would actually come. She. Lan Shuyan was suddenly confused. Because in the anime, Hanami's voice is female, but her body is that of a big man. So should this be defined as male or female? Lan Shuyan fell into deep thought. Forget it, define it as it. And if he is rescued, then rescue him. Anyway, Luhu is not worth mentioning compared to the real person. Just when Lan Shuyan was thinking about this, Gojo Satoru came back directly. Obviously he didn't gain anything. Teacher, what's wrong? Lan Shuyan looked at Gojo Satoru. What a failure. Failed to catch up, they seemed to have the ability to leave that area instantly. So what about you? What about the top of Mount Fuji that Hisahito mentioned? Is it solved? Gojo Satoru looked around but didn't see Luhu's head. What a failure. We failed to keep an eye on it. After all, it was rescued by its companions when we were distracted. Lan Shuyan imitated Gojo Satoru's tone and spoke. This made Gojo Satoru's mouth twitch. He seriously suspected that Lan Shuyan was implying something to him. Well, forget it. Get ready to go back. At least you all learned a lot tonight, and I also got to see the real, viewing flowers in the mirror, so it was worth the trip. But, Lan, don't mess with the bondage so casually. Gojo Satoru said this in a serious tone. Because Gojo Satoru was really worried that Lan Shuyan's casual contractual bondage would eventually bring him a terrible price. I understand, teacher. Lan Shuyan smiled and responded to Gojo Satoru. He knew that Gojo Satoru was really worried about him. But in fact, Lan Shuyan really didn't have any worries, because Gojo Satoru probably never thought that the restraint he set would come with a specified price, and no one knew how outrageous the price he had to specify was. Next up is new training. Lan, Fushiguro and the others don't seem to have any effect on your improvement, so I will accompany you and Yuji for special training next. Gojo Satoru finally decided to train Lan Shuyan together. But the main trainer is still Yuji Itadori, because Lan Shuyan's fighting experience and random coping methods just shown are very mature. Lan Shuyan even feels that if Lan Shuyan's heaven and curse is the same as Zen and Maki, then he may become a real heaven and tyrant. Oh, right, look, I'll give you something later, I think you might be interested. Gojo Satoru gave Lan Shuyan a very mysterious smile. This time, they did not return to the technical high school, but went to the temporary residence prepared by Gojo Satoru. This was the place that Gojo Satoru deliberately arranged for Yuji Itadori to live in. Gojo Satoru did not waste any time. After letting Yuji Itadori go to bed, Gojo Satoru directly took Lan Shuyan to a basement. There were many talismans posted here, which looked like a scene from a horror story. Gojo Satoru asked Lan Shuyan to wait, and he went straight to pick something up. Then he picked up a box full of talismans and threw it to Lan Shuyan. Lan Shuyan directly reached out to take it. Open it and have a look. Gojo Satoru said with a smile, his hands in his pockets. This made Lan Shuyan tear off the talisman and open the box. Then Lan Shuyan looked at Gojo Satoru in disbelief. You will like it very much, right? Gojo Satoru looked at Lan Shuyan's shocked expression and seemed very satisfied. From this, he also knew that Lan Shuyan definitely recognized the things inside, so he also believed that Lan Shuyan must have inherited some of the spell knowledge and memory of his ancestors. The Millennium Lock, the soul-releasing sword. Lan Shuyan grinned, laughing happily. Unfortunately, there was no Tensai Hoko, but he soon discovered that there was a short blade with a strange shape under the soul-releasing sword. Tensai Hoko? Question mark. The soul-releasing sword is a special grade cursed tool. The original work of the Millennium Lock did not mention what grade it was, but Gojo Satoru would directly give it to him, so it should also be special grade, because Gojo Satoru knew that he was determined not to use cursed tools other than special grade cursed tools. The Millennium Lock, a cursed tool of Fushiguro Shiji, can be extended infinitely as long as the end is not seen by others. The soul-releasing sword is also a cursed tool of Fushiguro Shiji, and this one is different from the one used by Zen and Mai when she became the new generation of Heaven and Tyrant in the comics. They are two different cursed tools, but the additional effects are the same. Tensai Hoko is also a cursed tool of Fushiguro Shiji, and the effect of the technique is to force the cancellation of the technique being activated. It seems that Gojo Satoru has a lot of resentment towards the cursed tools used by Fushiguro Shiji, and he has sealed them up. Sure enough, you recognize them all. That's easy. Send me the money. 2 billion yen. Gojo Satoru laughed happily, but Lan Shuyan was dumbfounded. What the hell? Money transfer? 2 billion yen. Lan Shuyan suddenly felt that these two magic tools were a bit expensive. They were both special grade magic tools, so why was Yuyun so unpopular? This made Lan Shuyan hurriedly take out his mobile phone to check the balance in his small treasury. Well, I spent a lot of money to buy Yuyun before, and now there is less than 100 million yen in the card. Without hesitation, make a call. Hello, Mom, me, send me money. 2 billion. Lan Shuyan went straight to the point. His parents didn't have time to accompany him, but on the other hand, his family really didn't lack money. Their businesses were all over the world, and they were the type that held sole control without any shareholders. After saying that, Lan Shuyan hung up the phone. Because Lan Shuyan spoke Chinese, Gojo Satoru couldn't understand. Ah, wait, I forgot to add the Japanese yen. Lan Shuyan suddenly realized, but at this moment, he received a text message on his phone. Gojo Satoru came over curiously. Lan Shuyan opened the app notification of Swiss Bank. After all, his mother usually used this when she sent him money to give to his grandfather. Gojo Satoru understood everything on it, and then Gojo Satoru fell silent, and so did Lan Shuyan. Gojo Satoru fell silent because of the many zeros after the 2 words of Lan Shuyan's balance. And the reason why Lan Shuyan was silent was that the 2 billion was right, but it was in US dollars. Oh shit, this is the first time I asked my family for money, and my mom just gave me so much. Does she have so much liquid cash? And this speed is too fast, right? Doesn't it require all kinds of procedures? Lan Shuyan was dumbfounded. Just now, it was the first time in Lan Shuyan's life that he asked his mother for money. His mother was so moved that she cried, saying that her son finally knew how to ask his mother for money, and that his son finally knew how to spend money, which added a little pressure to the family. Lan Shuyan never asked his family for money before, which made his parents feel no sense of accomplishment. They were all wondering why they earned so much assets, because their son didn't look like a rich second generation at all. He didn't spend money, and even at a young age, he already had tens of millions of assets. He was sensible, smart, and self-disciplined. He was also considerate of their long-term travels across the country and even the world. Ding dong. It was at this time that Lan Shuyan received another message from his mother. Son, spend it as much as you can. This is your pocket money. This is the first time you ask your mom for money in your life, so I'll give you a little more. Okay, it really is a little more. So, Lan Shuyan gave Gojo Satoru money without hesitation. Gojo Satoru accepted it with tears in his eyes. He is the strongest sorcerer in Japan, but the money in his card is not as much as Lan Shuyan's pocket money. Do you know the additional effects of these spell tools? Gojo Satoru adjusted his mood and looked at Lan Shuyan. Got it, thank you. To be honest, Lan Shuyan really likes these cursed tools. Let's not talk about the Wanli Lock and Tiani Boku, but Lan Shuyan really loves the Soul Release Knife. It has an additional feature that it can ignore the hardness of any object, directly attack the soul, and cut it apart, which can be regarded as a true injury. Well, next, while I train Yujin, you should think carefully about how to use these cursed tools to your best advantage. Gojo Satoru approached and patted Lan Shuyan on the shoulder, then left. Lan Shuyan was not sleepy, so he went directly to an open area to familiarize himself with these cursed tools. How to hide the tail of Wanli Lock. Think about how to hide it before considering its next use. Lan Shuyan pinched his chin and thought. Then he looked down at his pocket. It seemed that hiding it like this was a bit embarrassing, but suddenly Lan Shuyan found that an arm as beautiful as a pink lotus root stretched out from the back of his hand, and its palm pulled a section of Wanli Lock directly into the arm. Here, the Black brothers' spreading hands performed very well. This made Lan Shuyan twitch. He forgot this. The white ice pattern on the palm was Qingshan Shuiji's birth domain, which was also the place where Qingshan Shuiji stayed as a Shikigami. Now I should think about how to match it. Should I use it to hold the weapon and extend the attack range like Fushiguro Shiji? This seems good. After all, sometimes the same restraints as Heaven and Tyrant may not work. Lan Shuyan murmured to himself, but then sighed. Tenihoko had brought a great shadow to Gojo Satoru, so he hit it directly, which really surprised him. He originally thought that Tenihoko was destroyed. As for the soul-releasing sword, it will be very useful next time. Whether it is the Bound, Heaven and Tyrant, state or the state with spell power and technique, the soul-release sword is very useful. Lan Shuyan quickly decided on the direction of their use. So he started playing with them directly. Men, except for some special hobbies, swords, spears, halberds, etc. are all romantic, right? When many boys were young, they would be extremely excited when they saw a straight stick, and they would play with it for half a day. The only martial arts school that Lan Shuyan is proficient in is Bajikwan, and he only knows other martial arts schools. But the weapons are different. Lan Shuyan can use all weapons. Ordinary weapons are different from cursed weapons because cursed weapons have characteristics. So Lan Shuyan will learn the use of cursed weapons while Gojo Satoru is training Yuji Itadori. Moreover, Lan Shuyan found that these cursed weapons can actually extract positive energy because of his emotions even when he has no cursed power. Lan Shuyan began to carefully understand his positive energy again, and asked Gojo Satoru to help get some fly heads to do experiments. The effect of positive energy cursed power is very strange. Normally, when the cursed spirit reaches a certain level, it can master the reversal technique, but it is very difficult for human cursors to master it. Not to mention the difficulty of using the reversal technique to heal other people. Lan Shuyan knows that the only people who can do it are Ieri Shoko and Sukuna. The reversal technique that Lan Shuyan casts, that is, the so-called positive energy, can actually heal others, but whether they can survive depends on the other party's ability to bear it. Lan Shuyan remembered that when he was fighting with Geto Shiyu, the cursed spirit that was originally used by Geto Shiyu to resist Qingshan Shuiji's freezing became active after being hit by his slash mixed with positive energy. It felt like the body was proliferating. But in the end, it seemed that it could not bear the amount of positive energy and exploded directly. This also made Lan Shuyan understand that his viewing flowers in the mirror was the same effect as the reversal technique performed by Jiliu Gaozi on others, but the difference was that the amount injected was so large that ordinary cursed spirits could not bear it at all. Under this assumption, Lan Shuyan conducted 2 other experiments. One is to mobilize only the cursed power of the cursed tool itself to become positive energy to attack the first-level cursed spirit provided by Gojo Satoru for his experiment. This level of amount will make this first-level cursed spirit completely fine, and even more active, and the positive energy cursed power seems to be absorbed by it. One is to directly transform the emotions generated by oneself into positive energy, driving the cursed power of the cursed tool to transform into positive energy, and attack with a 1+1 amount. The body of the first-level cursed spirit of the experimental subject will instantly swell and twist, and finally explode and die. I see. A single positive energy can be understood as a healing spell. That amount will make the enemy more active, because the positive energy injected into the enemy's body becomes the opponent's recovery force. However, the premise is that the opponent must have a strong body that can accept this amount. But when the two are added together, it becomes a flowers in the mirror that is almost the same as the black flash, and its power can break the space. But Lan Shuyan looked at the nunchaku in his left hand, then at the soul-releasing knife in his right hand. I have a guess, I don't know if it's right. I always feel that if I want to break the enemy's territory like before, relying on the soul-release sword should not have that kind of power. On the contrary, Yuyun gives me a better feeling, and it can only be done with the physical ability obtained by binding. Lan Shuyan currently has no enemies that can display the domain, so he cannot prove this conjecture. If you want to really understand it, you have to rely on actual combat to experiment. This is the conclusion Lan Shuyan has reached in the past few days. Lan, what are you thinking about? While Lan Shuyan was thinking, Gojo Satoru's voice appeared. He came over with Yuji Itadori. Nothing, just some guesses that need to be verified, but unfortunately no one can use the domain for me to try. Lan Shuyan spread his hands. Looking for Gojo Satoru. What a joke, a second domain can make Genrin and others stagger, not to mention him who has no curse power. Gojo Satoru's domain is activated as soon as you enter it, which is different from Luhu's. Well, there will be a chance later. Now something happened, but I have something else to do, so you can solve it together. Although I can't go with you, I found a reliable junior for you. Gojo Satoru explained to Lan Shuyan the reason why he came. This made Lan Shuyan forget about the experiment instantly. If you tell me this, I won't be sleepy. If the plot doesn't change too much, the next is the real story, and the reliable junior mentioned by Gojo Satoru is the reliable middle-aged man, the worker Nanami Kento. But these are not important. What is important is the real person's, in action transformation. This ability can make him drool. Go, go, go. Lan Shuyan immediately put the cursed tool back into the living domain on the back of his hand, and then directly linked arms with Gojo Satoru, and Yuji Itadori was also pulled over by him, and the 3 street slickers appeared. Just like the original plot, Nanami Kento was indeed asked by Gojo Satoru to help. The reliable Nanami really has a steady feeling. That's it. Working part-time is shit. Nanami Kento's wise words, and he shouted them out with his head held high and his chest puffed out with confidence. As a part-time worker, his resentment was really strong, and the argument with Gojo Satoru made Yuji Itadori dumbfounded. Soon, Nanami Kento took Yuji Itadori and Aoki away. Just like the original plot, the incident happened in the movie theater, where the seats and the floor under the seats were all covered in blood. Aoki looked at the bloody scene and felt a little calm. Perhaps in Aoki's view, life is not important. Or maybe, Aoki had already understood in his previous life how fragile and insignificant life is, and that being too fragile and cowardly would lead to bullying. Nanami Kento is a very reliable middle-aged man, so he began to give Yuji Itadori the experience of the remnant of the footsteps of the cursed spirit, but Aoki couldn't see that kind of thing here. It was the same even with special glasses. Following the remnant of the cursed power, they came to the roof. Nanami Kento and Yuji Ren directly opened an umbrella. Only Lan Shuyan held a white oil paper umbrella, which was also a cursed tool. Qingshan Shuiji gave it to him to protect him from the rain, because Lan Shuyan did not bring an umbrella when he went out. Qingshan Shuiji must have prepared it for him like a mother. This meticulousness and tenderness, it's really hard not to love Lan Shuyan. Holding an umbrella, Lan Shuyan stopped after walking a few steps. He took off his glasses and looked into a dark corner, and Nanami Kento did the same. Sure enough, the artificial cursed spirits transformed by real people are similar to the incarnation state. Even if I don't wear glasses, I can see them. Lan Shuyan thought so in his heart. However, Lan Shuyan had no intention of taking action, because he was not interested in cursed spirits of this level. Instead, Yuji Itadori had thrown away his umbrella and was ready to attack. Yuji-san, leave this to me. You and I-san will deal with the other one. Nanami Kento stopped Yuji, and Yuji also noticed the cursed spirit hiding behind the corner on the other side, who looked a little shy. This should be a female, right? After all, this shy look hiding in the corner is really cute. Lan Shuyan said with a smile. This immediately made Yuji Itadori and Kento Nanami full of question marks. Cute. Nanami Kento couldn't help but look over, and then his mouth twitched like Yuji Itadori. So, Lan Shuyan, what is your aesthetic view? Are you really attracted to females? To be honest, Lan Shuyan thinks that Nanami Kento's 7-3 techniques is actually very powerful. And he is so mature and steady. While fighting, he explains knowledge to Yuji Itadori and him like a teacher. He is so reliable, okay. And overall, Yuji Itadori has made great progress. He is really growing fast and deserves to be the protagonist. Before long, Yuji Itadori and Nanami Kento each defeated their opponents, and Nanami Kento also found something wrong. Nanami Kento had the body sent to Ieri Shoko for autopsy, and got the accurate answer from Ieri Shoko. Ieri Shoko also comforted Yuji Itadori considerately. Lan Shuyan was listening on the side, and he was thinking. It seems that everyone around Yuji Itadori is very gentle. Well, Lan Shuyan patted his wet sleeves. It was still raining heavily outside. After thinking for a while, Lan Shuyan looked at Yuji Itadori and sighed. Then he picked up the oil paper umbrella and walked to the door. Mr. Lan, where are you going? Nanami Kento asked immediately. Compared with the kind-hearted character of Yuji Itadori, Nanami Kento felt that Lan Shuyan was more suitable for a sorcerer. Because Lan Shuyan just watched the whole process, there was no sympathy in his eyes for those humans who were turned into cursed spirits, and it could even be said that there was no emotional fluctuation. Well, wait a little longer. The people at the window are already collecting the location information of the remnants, and they can make deductions in the end. Nanami Kento stood up and looked at the rain outside the window. The next day, the door of the room was opened. It was Ijichi Jigao, a humble tool. The sound of the door opening woke up Nanami Kento and Itadori Yuji. They had just spent the night here casually. Mr. Nanami, the information has been collected. Yuji. Chiko handed over the information immediately. They all got up and washed up. Then Nanami Kento took the information from Iji Chiko and asked Iji Chiko to take out the map and mark the location. Then he used the range distance deduction to confirm the enemy's approximate location. But as he looked around, Nanami Kento suddenly felt that something was missing. He looked around and didn't see Lan Shuyan's people. At this time, Lan Shuyan has already walked into the sewer. He yawned. He came out last night. He couldn't wait for the window to send the summary information, so he could only find a sewer outlet under the nearby bridge. After all, in the original book, the place where the real person hid had a bridge, a river, and a hole that looked like an underground drainage outlet. Who knows that Lan Shuyan actually searched for a whole night? I should have gone to sleep and waited for the news. You are very tired. Qing Xuanshuiji hung on Lan Shuyan's neck. She accompanied Lan Shuyan to search for the whole night. Well, very tired. After all, I have been looking for the cursed spirit all night. The main target, the instigator, was not found, but a lot of cursed spirits were killed. Lan Shuyan kept walking and searching without any curse power, and even the strongest physical strength would be exhausted. Huh, are you looking for the person who started this incident? Then why don't you ask me to help you? Qingshan Shuiji suddenly asked this question. This made Lan Shuyan stop and tilt his head to look at Qingshan Shuiji's pretty face. Lan Shuyan really didn't think of asking Qingshan Shuiji to help him find it, because when the cursed spirit is hidden, it is basically difficult to be discovered, even if the opponent is a special cursed spirit. Just like in the original work, when Hua Yu held his head, even Gojo Satoru couldn't lock it. Well, I want to ask, why do you think I came out in the middle of the night, Miss Qingshan? Lan Shuyan's mouth twitched. I thought you wanted to have a midnight date with me. In order to satisfy you, I have satisfied you. Qingshan Shuiji loosened her arms around Lan Shuyan's neck, floated to the front of Lan Shuyan, and smiled at him. Lan Shuyan was speechless for a moment. Well, I'll help you find it. Qingshan Shuiji turned around, put her palm in front of her mouth, and then blew a breath gently. Then it seemed that cold air was gathering, and her beautiful blue eyes stared at the gas. Lan Shuyan looked at Qingshan Shuiji. The quiet Qingshan Shuiji was also very beautiful, and her wifely temperament was more dignified and generous. How to say it? Lan Shuyan thought that this temperament was not like the dignified and generous women in ancient Japan, but more like the wives of officials in ancient China. Just as Lan Shuyan was looking at Qingshan Shuiji, Qingshan Shuiji waved her hand to make the mist disappear, and her blue eyes looked at Lan Shuyan, who was looking at her. Why are you looking at me like that? Have you fallen in love with me? Qingshan Shuiji asked with a smile. No, no, no. I won't fall in love with you, I want you to fall in love with me. This way I can fall in love with you. Lan Shuyan grinned. The former is a noun, but the latter is a verb. Ah, Snow Girl's heart will not be melted easily. Qingshan Shuiji covered her mouth and laughed. She naturally knew the nouns and verbs of Lan Shuyan. After all, Snow Girl also knew how to surf the internet. When she was held by Lan Shuyan to sleep, she always used Lan Shuyan's mobile phone to surf the internet. By the way, what were you doing just now? Lan Shuyan was very curious about Qingzhan Shuiji's behavior just now. The teacher said that he knew very little about Qingzhan Shuiji, and even her abilities. He didn't understand much. The only thing he knew was what she said, looking at flowers in the mirror. Seeing flowers in the smoke. My eyes can see through many things, find many things, and have a wide range. The culprit you are looking for should be this, right? Qingzhan Shuiji waved her hand, and an ice mirror appeared in front of Lan Shuyan. A figure appeared in it, and it was the real person. This surprised Lan Shuyan very much. This is the one with the strongest magical power in this area. If not, then there are no other powerful cursed spirits nearby. Qingshan Shuiji explained. This made Lan Shuyan immediately hold Qingshan Shuiji's face with one hand, and kissed Qingshan Shuiji's red lips, looking very excited. Qingshan Shuiji was stunned, stroking her pink lips with her slender fingers. Her blue eyes looked at Lan Shuyan with a half smile, which made Lan Shuyan feel uncomfortable all over. Why does it feel like Qingshan Shuiji's eyes are full of mother's love for her child? This is outrageous, okay. But to be honest, Qingshan Shuiji's lips are super soft, but a little prickly, so cold that Lan Shuyan's lips were frozen in the touch. Although I don't mind, don't kiss me easily before you make me fall in love with you. If you delay the separation just now, my whole mouth will be frozen. Qingshan Shuiji was not angry, anyway, she seemed to be in a good mood. Let's go, find your target. Qingshan Shuiji stretched out her hands to hold Lan Shuyan's neck again. This made Lan Shuyan pat the ice chips on his mouth. There were ice chips on his mouth after just one smack. Don't talk about other things. No. No, I need a strategy. I need a strategy. Lan Shuyan actually didn't try to conquer Qingshan Shuiji, he just flirted with her occasionally. Because Lan Shuyan knew very well that the heart of the snow girl was hard to be conquered. He could only take it slowly. Following Qingshan Shuiji's instructions, Lan Shuyan soon arrived at a relatively large space, where there were many cylinders supporting the top. To be honest, Lan Shuyan didn't quite know what this kind of underground building was used for in Japan. And in the corner, there was a person with stitches on his body and fashionable clothes lying on a net bed. How strange. It was found so quickly. The real person raised his hand and waved to Lan Shuyan. You are followed by a cursed spirit, and you are 1.9 meters tall, with black hair and glasses. You are the sorcerer who ripped off the head of that guy Luhu twice, right? The real person talked a lot and acted very calmly. Lan Shuyan was not in a hurry and walked slowly down. The real person also got up lazily and stretched. He looked at ease and did not feel panicked. When no one knew his technique, his attack was easy to succeed, but Lan Shuyan's information had been obtained. Sha Yuji and his team came to the conclusion that Lan Shuyan can be regarded as another version of Yuta Otsutsukoshi, but Lan Shuyan's upper and lower limits are very extreme. So the real person did not really mean to despise Lan Shuyan. Perhaps among these special grade people, except for Sha Yuji, the real person should be the one with the best thinking logic and the smartest one. Finished. Lan Shuyan raised his hand, and a knife sheath appeared from his back. Lan Shuyan held it in his hand. It was the soul release knife. The real person took a step back, and his face looked a little ugly. Because he felt the power of the knife. The real person was also a special grade curse spirit that was generated not long ago. He was still learning, so he couldn't recognize the origin of the knife. That's enough, then. Miss Qingshan, help me. Lan Shuyan looked around, but was stunned for a moment, and then looked around, because Qingshan Shuiji was gone. She was clearly beside him just now, and she didn't return to his hand. Soon, Lan Shuyan saw Qingshan Shuiji. At this moment, Qingshan Shuiji was sitting on the platform where he had just come down, sitting very straight. Yudata, its soul is too dirty, I don't want to touch it. Qingshan Shuiji raised her hand to half cover her mouth, turned her head and looked at Zhenren with disgust. At this moment, Zhenren's soul in Qingshan Shuiji's eyes was as black as ink. Although Qingshan Shuiji is a cursed spirit, her soul is actually very pure. Because she is the same as Yuta Otsutsu's girlfriend, she was cursed into a cursed spirit by the people who loved her. Lan Shuyan was full of question marks. Miss Qingshan used to dote on him very much. And what does she mean by Zhenren's soul is dirty? Can she see souls? Well, never mind. I originally wanted to use his technique, but now it seems that it is not possible. After all, I am definitely not as familiar with the use of Wu Wei transformation as he is after copying it. In addition, in general, even if I touch him with the same ability, he can also perform the same Wu Wei transformation to restore himself. When he meets me, I can always keep the original nature of my soul without any change. So the two are just rookies fighting each other. As expected, Fushiguro Shinobu wins my heart. Lan Shuyan gave up the Wu Wei transformation experience card, and directly bound the mirror image copied from the real person, turning himself into a temporary heaven and tyrant again. He lost all the real person's curse power and techniques, and turned them all into various abilities of his own body. Lan Shuyan wanted to cripple the real person, and then activate Sway Yu to kill the real person. Not good. This guy, why did his soul seem to be bound by something for a moment? Hey, is restraint so easy to use? Obviously. The real person saw the reason. That's why he was so solemn. He heard from Geto Suguru that restraint is not a method that can be used casually. Sukuna, what are you talking about? Isn't it enough to have hands? What's more, I have 4 hands. Then, please sacrifice your life to satisfy my hobby. I will accept it with gratitude. Lan Shuyan raised his long legs, and the moment his white shoes touched the ground, his body disappeared from the spot. The next second, the real person widened his eyes, because his forearm was cut directly from the joint, and his forearm fell directly to the ground, and a lot of blood spurted out. This was intentional by Lan Shuyan. The real person looked around, because he couldn't catch Lan Shuyan's figure at all. Even he couldn't do anything at this speed. In the case of inaction transformation without unfolding the field, it is necessary to touch the enemy with the palm, otherwise there is no way to activate the ability. Lan Shuyan's ability to bind, although not as powerful as Heaven and Tyrant, is actually not much inferior. Lan Shuyan's ability to bind is based on the equivalent exchange of the power of the spell and the strength of the technique, that is, the strength of the physical ability is related to the copied mirror spell power technique. 100 spell power plus 50 technique equals 150 physical ability. But this won't kill me. The real man raised his arm and tried to control his soul to regenerate it, but he was suddenly stunned because he found that the soul in his arm was gone. This made him look at the broken arm on the ground. He could see that his missing soul was on his arm. How is it possible? The real person was completely dumbfounded. The soul is distributed throughout the body. Even if the body is damaged, unless it is a special attack, the soul must be fine. It is impossible for the soul to be cut off and bound in the broken arm like in the current situation. Nothing is impossible. Lan Shuyan suddenly stopped moving and stood still. If Lan Shuyan wanted to, he would have cut off the real person's neck, but Lan Shuyan did not do that. This knife is called the soul-releasing knife. It is one of the special grade cursed tools, which has the ability to ignore the hardness of all objects and cut into souls. However, to unleash its full effect, one needs a pair of eyes that can observe the souls of inanimate objects, which I don't have. So its ability is limited, but it is enough to deal with you. Lan Shuyan will be happy to get the soul release knife. It is precisely because Lan Shuyan was originally thinking about how to deal with the real person, and the appearance of the soul release knife made Lan Shuyan have his own ideas. To be honest, the experience of Zenin Maki's, Heaven and Curse binding, is to deal with the real person. In the face of extreme speed, any ability is futile. What's more, it is a real person who has just been born not long ago and has not fully grown up. It can be said that Lan Shuyan is now a natural enemy of Genrin. That's right. In addition to Kugasaki Nobara and Itadori Yuji, Genrin has one more natural enemy. Although Lan Shuyan doesn't have a pair of eyes that can observe the souls of inanimate objects, it really doesn't affect Lan Shuyan's use. Impossible. The existence of the soul cannot be harmed if it is not felt. The real person has a lot to say about the study of the soul. He does not believe Lan Shuyan's statement at all. Even if the soul release knife can really cut the soul, it is really difficult to cut the soul when the soul cannot be seen. At most, it can only destroy the body. Well, it doesn't matter if I chat with you. Lan Shuyan grinned. What do you think the soul is? The thing that exists inside your cursed body. So how do you think the bodies of your cursed spirits were formed? In my opinion, you cursed spirits are the consciousness generated by human negative emotions, and then the consciousness forces you to generate curse power, and then the curse power generates the body. Fundamentally speaking, your body is equivalent to the soul. Lan Shuyan held the soul release knife across his body and looked at the real person with a smile. This made the real person dumbfounded. He studied humans, but cursed spirits had never thought about it. In my opinion, your existence is not special. What makes you special is your spell. Lan Shuyan walked towards Genrin step by step with the soul release knife. Genrin's face was solemn. He had to find a way to meet Lan Shuyan to start his spell. He was also betting that Lan Shuyan didn't know his real spell. Because at present, he was very sure that the sorcerer should know that he could use spells to turn humans into incarnate cursed spirits. And in order to increase the effect of his spell, Genrin planned to use the spell to publicly. Did you know that my magic can do more than just? The real person spoke. No, I know your technique. Your bondage can touch other people's souls and manipulate and transform them. But before the real person finished speaking, Lan Shuyan interrupted him directly. Playing the ritual publicly can increase the power of the ritual or strengthen the expected effect, but Lan Shuyan didn't intend to listen. It would be useless for him to improve it. The real person was dumbfounded. What the hell is this person? Why interrupt others casually? Don't play the trick of revealing the technique. I told you so much just because I want to increase the chances of obtaining your technique. Bound. I'm really good at it. Lan Shuyan disappeared again. But this time the real person didn't sit there and wait for death. He used the souls in other parts of his body to transform into the souls of the lost forearms to restore his body, and at the same time, he sent out dozens of cyborgs. The cyborgs all expanded their bodies and steadily wrapped the real person's body inside. This made Lan Shuyan show a mocking smile. A few knife flowers instantly cut all the cyborgs into pieces. But then Lan Shuyan was stunned for a moment, because the real person actually turned his arms into whips. There were many sharp blades on the short section of the whip, which turned into afterimages and swung in all directions. The real person wanted to use a range attack. The enemy actually dared to counterattack us. Lan Shuyan stopped moving directly, and stood directly on the spot. The real person saw that he did not move quickly, but stepped over slowly. This made the real person a little angry, because he had never taken him seriously from beginning to end. Just a monkey. The real person concentrated all the whip blades and swung them forward. But then the soul release knife in Lan Shuyan's hand turned into a residual image, and while walking along, he also chopped the whip blades into pieces. The key point is, Lan Shuyan still swung the knife with one hand and put one hand in his pocket. Not good. Zhenren broke out in a cold sweat. Lan Shuyan in front of him was really too restrained. Zhenren knew this speed very well. Even if he changed the sole of his legs into an animal, he would definitely not be able to keep up with the speed, and his range attack would be cut off. He couldn't touch the opponent, but the opponent could keep cutting his physical soul. Originally, in Zhenren's opinion, Lan Shuyan was really nothing. At most, he was copied and equalized. At worst, he still had the cyborg. The real person had no choice but to spit out a few more cyborgs. They were all very small, probably about 5-year-old children. They all cried and said in childish voices, "It hurts. Dad, Mom, we want Dad, Mom." In the real person's opinion, facing a cyborg that is not only a human, but also a child, Lan Shuyan, as a sorcerer, should always hesitate, right? After all, he has just learned about the world of sorcery and should not be able to do it. As for the real person himself, he threw out another cyborg, and this cyborg quickly grew larger, filling the space in front of him, then turned around and ran quickly without looking back. Lan Shuyan looked at the cyborg children who rushed over. Their voices were very innocent and frightened. They couldn't control themselves and could only pounce on Lan Shuyan. Although I have strange habits, my values are actually quite positive. That's all. I don't want to play with you anymore. Lan Shuyan disappeared from the spot, passing the transformed children, and the transformed human flesh wall in the space instantly turned into countless pieces. The real person who was running to escape suddenly felt dizzy. The moment he fell to the ground, he saw that his arms and legs were suspended in the air, and then his face rubbed against the ground, and then his limbless body rolled some distance. And Lan Shuyan also appeared next to the real person who became a human stick. Lan Shuyan raised the soul release knife in his hand and chopped it down again. This time, the real person's buttocks were cut off, and a lot of blood spurted out. Lan Shuyan did not stop, and chopped again. This time it was the real person's ear. The real person could only wail. This made Lan Shuyan squat down and turn the real person's body over with the soul release knife. Then a knife pierced the real person's stomach and lifted him up. "Do you like toying with humans? How do you feel now?" Lan Shuyan asked with a grin. "Well, forget it. A guy who is not even a female cursed spirit. I accept your spell." Lan Shuyan directly cancelled the copy of Mirror Flower. The real person kept his head down, vomiting blood from his mouth. But just when Lan Shuyan cancelled Mirror Flower, the real person suddenly raised his head, grinning ferociously, and the moment he opened his mouth, an arm suddenly rushed out of his mouth and pressed towards Lan Shuyan's head. This speed was very fast, and at this moment Lan Shuyan's knife was stabbed in his stomach, and his head was very close to him, so the real person had great confidence that he could complete it. Lan Shuyan, who had no curse power, would definitely not be able to withstand his attack this time. If he had curse power, he could still withstand it for a few more times. As his palm got closer and closer to Lan Shuyan's face, the real person became more and more excited. He was already thinking about how strong Lan Shuyan would be if he turned him into his own cyborg. The real person never thought that the cyborgs of those children in a wall could stop Lan Shuyan. He was waiting to give Lan Shuyan a fatal blow. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.